the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy.
Come on, let's wake up.
Gotta wake up.
Are you sure you want to wake up to this?
Come on now, wake up.
I can't wait to wake up.
Wake up, idiot.
Crispy Tuesday morning. That chill is in the air. It feels glorious here on this August 20th. Thank you for starting it with us. I'm Kevin Bowen. This is the Wake Up Call. KB and Andy Sweeney. The other voice you will prominently hear, Mark Dykton, on the ones and twos. I'm sure Mark was up late last night cutting up Reds highlights from their 6-3 win north of the border.
Any toilet sounds this morning?
Oh,
Yeah.
there's always toilet
I'm
sounds.
sure we will hear that at each morning check down here. So looking forward to that. And I think as we started yesterday, we were in a bit of a giving mood right out of the gate, rewarding our diehard listening audience at the 7 o'clock hour. Should we do the same here?
Yeah, let's do it. Now we're going to go to the YouTube chat. We're going to go to the phones. What are we going to do here? What do you want to do?
I think as a true millennial, we reward a little YouTube action here.
Let's do it.
We certainly catered to terrestrial radio on the phone lines yesterday. Mark Dykton, we've got, 6 spots left, 5 spots left? Fill me in on what we got left.
I believe there's 6 because there's the 3 of us, and I think we've given away 2 spots so far. So, oh no, we have the winner back, so we've given away 6 spots. So, yeah, 6 spots left.
Okay.
Total.
Well, part of me is like, should we ask a trivia question? Part of me is like, should we do fast fingers?
Well, how does Fast Fingers work on YouTube?
Well, I guess first response, right?
The first person to say something nice in the YouTube chat gets a team.
There you go.
Because it
Right
probably
there.
happens very, very infrequently.
We need a nice comment in the YouTube
We need
chat.
a
Mark
nice
Dykton will
comment.
be our judger.
You damn right he will.
The winner of that
Now, that could go a lot of ways.
gets
Exactly.
ownership.
Or counting someone saying, like, good morning? Or is
That's
it?
no, it's got to be a nice statement, not good morning.
Nice statement. Fantasy owner
Well,
will
you're
be
really
giving away in the
hanging me
YouTube
over
chat.
a barrel right now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We'll palm this off on Mark
So, KB,
here.
I know. Good morning to you. I don't know if you watched any of this last night, but ESPN had, I think it was on ESPN too. You mentioned the Fantasy League. They had their they're in the midst of it right now, their 24-hour marathon on fantasy football. And it's disgusting the amount that I probably watched it last night. Like, you probably watched it 0, I would imagine, right? Am I right? You watch it none, which is fine. I understand.
I did not watch un second.
I probably watched a couple hours.
My first fantasy football draft is tonight.
Is it really? Okay.
This is one of my bigger leagues. This is
Oh,
an
boy.
auction draft. Last year, I was the regular season champ. Lost. It was only a 14 playoff.
Was it your father-in-law?
No.
Was that the one, or was that
me
the pick 'em?
trying to help them in a pick 'em
gotcha.
league.
Yeah, you said they asked you for help. You gave them advice. They went against your advice. They lost. You look like the smart football guy.
Are you good with regular season champ, loser in the semis, loser in the third place game, and I walk away with no money? Are you good with that?
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Or should regular season champ
Now,
get a little piece of the pie?
I have been in leagues where regular season champ at least gets, like their money back, or they at least get something for being the regular season champ. But I would imagine you're probably everyone gets a trophy. That's what I would imagine the majority of our audience thinks when they hear that from Kevin Bowen.
Oh my gosh, Mark, there's so many compliments in the YouTube chat.
Well, that's
See,
what I'm
there you
saying.
go.
We really.
Mark's got I figured that would be an easy thing.
Wow.
There wouldn't be that many.
And boy, we've got some diehards at 7:01 in the morning.
Good,
Thank
well, they
you to
deserve it.
everybody in the YouTube chat.
Well, if we're going off of the nice, like, right at it, like, who said something nice that wasn't just good morning or something, I think Trent is our winner because he said, "You're cute." Does that count as a compliment? I guess that's what.
Again, Mark,
Well
I will
done.
let you handle it.
Trent, you're the winner.
I'm
Congratulations to
seeing-
Trent.
Shout out to Caleb. Kevin, your hair makes you look 22 again. I was going for a little 32. Caleb also goes, Notre Dame's going to win it all.
Oh, God.
I do
okay.
like that.
Let's settle down with that one.
Danny just lying here at 7:04. Mark, Kevin, and Andy, the most handsome cast on radio.
Sure. Right.
But nonetheless, we will certainly hand out some ownership here in the fantasy.
We can do more of that next week or later on this week.
And we have a fantasy guest coming up, Dave Richard, right, from CBS Sports. He's going to join us coming up on Thursday, as I know fantasy drafts are abundant. Today's show, we will certainly take a trip down I-74. Colts, Bengals. It is just one joint practice this week. So this afternoon, that is it. Tomorrow will be your off day, your walkthrough, and then Thursday's the preseason finale. And by all accounts, the Colts are expected to play their starters a good amount. That is an Amazon game on Thursday. We probably should double check if that's being picked up locally. I think sometimes it is picked up locally.
I didn't think it was because I thought Rakes Ross said, "Yeah, they're taking money out of my kid's Christmas."
Well,
I think is what he said a couple weeks ago.
They would still leave Michaels and Herb Street on the call, but some local station would pick it up.
I don't know that. Okay,
I know they do that during the regular season. The Amazon games are picked up locally, but we'll double check that for you here. And so that's what this week looks like. Joel A. Erickson from the Stars going to join us. You know, Andy, a lot of my content right now on the website is roster cut related. I just posted an article, 10 questions the Colts must weigh with roster cuts. You know, one I threw out there is like, do they need to cut Jelani Woods?
What do you mean by need? I guess.
Okay.
And let me bring up your article. When did you post this? This morning?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Let me throw some names at you.
Sure.
Right?
Like, do they need to cut him? Well, they don't need to, probably. But Rayquan Davis, coming back does kind of, take up a spot, does it not? Because we didn't know if he was going to be back or not.
Let me throw these names at you.
Okay.
Sam Ehlinger, Tyler Goodson, Ashton Doolin, Dalton Tucker, Blake Freeland, Taven Bryan, Isaiah Land, Jalen Simpson.
Right.
I have all those dudes on the 53-man roster.
Okay, I can't fight you probably on any of those. I know the least about Dalton Tucker. You tell me. That would be the only one.
Is there any part of you that says you're going to keep those 8 players over Jelani Woods, a dude that was a third-round pick, a dude that missed all of last season, a guy that has a flash or two in the NFL? Like, do you get where I'm going with that?
Right,
like,
I get where you're going with it, yeah.
Are you really going to say, we have got to have Dalton Tucker? We need that 9th offensive lineman, the undrafted free agent out of Marshall. He's 24 years old. He's a mauling guard. We've got to have him. And again, this is part of the discussion.
Yeah, the answer is probably no on many of those guys. Although I could see some of those guys, perhaps even Goodson, make it over Jelani Woods.
Sure. I mean, there are some of those names like Isaiah Land, for
what
example.
happens with Blake Freeland? I have no idea.
But
that'd be an interesting
just an
question.
Element of like, can you find others? I mean, we're talking about a 4th running back. We're talking about a 9th offensive lineman. We're talking about a 6th corner. Are all of these guys, oh my gosh, they just mean too much to our football team to part ways with.
No.
That's what I'm kind of getting at. So that's a question I want to throw Joel's way when he joins us. But as you mentioned, Rayquan Davis, that announcement late yesterday, he could make his training camp preseason debut, if you will, today on the practice field. Now, he did participate in the spring, had the high blood pressure that developed during training camp check-in. We have not seen him yet, but you would think with yesterday's announcement, he is good to go. He will be on the 53-man roster, and that is one of the questions that needed to be answered here in the next week, and it looks like it has been answered.
Boy, I tell you, he goes right from the exercise bike right out onto the field and right against what, is what many people think a for sure playoff team if Joe Burrow can stay healthy. And I think that's, it's interesting for me this week, KB, and we'll dive into the 53-man roster. By the way, speaking of the 53-man roster, do you see this wrinkled, crinkled piece of paper that I have in front of me? Okay, just a wrinkled piece of paper.
Sure.
Okay, so I guess this would have been Saturday, Sunday afternoon, Sunday night, getting ready for the show. I knew that this week, probably, today and going into tomorrow, that we would be discussing the 53-man roster. So I went, and I apologize for others, okay? Joel A. Erickson, now he may have revised in the last 24 hours, but Joel, who we're going to have on coming up at 8 o'clock, he had his 53-man roster, okay? James Boyd of The Athletic. Remember, we had him on last week, and we were having some fun.
How he hates Jelani Woods cut.
And so did Joel. And James was funny. He's like, I hate doing these 53-man rosters, especially this early in camp, but he did it. And then you had yours up. What was it? Was it Saturday night into Sunday morning, I believe? You had it up on the website. And so I went through, and I made a notation on where you guys were different. And then I threw the paper away. So you know what I had to do instead of redoing the work this morning? I had to do a little dumpster diving at 6 a.m. to find the piece of paper.
You were determined to dig it out.
Well, I mean, I didn't want to go through it. It took like 15, 20 minutes to do all that. I've already done the work. I didn't want to redo the work, Kevin Bowen.
I'll be honest, I've already made some tweaks.
Oh, no, you made a tweak?
Yeah.
When did you make a tweak?
I actually threw Dalton Tucker on there. And
okay. Well, that was one of the differences that you had because Josh Sills got cut. They had Josh Sills.
Yeah, he got cut yesterday. It's funny. We carry a weird NFL local team flag in this market. I don't think it's happened really since you've been here. but the Colts had a streak, Andy, that ended a couple of years ago of 22 straight years with an undrafted free agent making the week 1 roster.
Okay.
And, Gary Brackett's
Sure.
the poster child of it, but, the Colts are so proud of that. And, again, I think it hasn't happened like 2 out of the last 3 years. I would have to look it up exactly. But I'm sitting there thinking throughout the spring, there's no chance any undrafted free agent makes a team. And then, guys like Wesley French, names we never mention, guys like Josh Sills, those two were the only 2 backup interior linemen to play snaps for the Colts last year. They both got hurt. And either in French's case, he's on IR, in Sills' case, he got waived injured yesterday. So now it's like they need a new guy in that role. Is it Danny Pinter? Is it Dalton Tucker? And I'm like, sure, why not? Let's throw the undrafted
See through
free
Dalton
agent on
Tucker
there.
in there. Okay.
So
I got
right
no
now,
problem with that.
I'll
make
Dalton
a note.
Tucker action on there. I think it's a little after 2 o'clock start time today. Again, Colts and Bengals. I did see Zach Taylor yesterday, Cincinnati head coach. He has not committed to his starters playing on Thursday or not. Now, we know Shane Steichen hasn't done that publicly. Chris Ballard did it publicly with John. I think one other area I'd like to go with Joel at some point, Andy, when he joins us, was Jim Irsay being crazy uncle Saturday night? Or is that how Jim Irsay really feels?
I feel like we need a Jim Irsay translator.
Which is, boy, it's a difficult job.
Which is not an easy job to have.
I don't know if I want that. But I guess in a way, that's kind of my job. But do you get where I'm going with that?
I think he's backing his guy, but he also sounds like he's...
crazy uncle? Is that wait, I'm just going to say this because I know the red light's on.
Right.
And I know this is, really,
it's time to shine.
Outside of Irsay maybe popping his head up in a post-game locker room, we're not going to really see him in front of mics. At least we're not supposed to see him in front of mics a whole lot in the upcoming, days and weeks. So I do think that is a question that I have here moving forward.
Yeah, and you mentioned the practices coming up with the Bengals. This is so different. And I'm the Cardinals came into town last week, KB, and, Arizona might be a better team, but the reality is and was that the Colts are just a much better team than Arizona. They are more established. They have better players. I think this year, if AR plays the way that he could, I think you could look and say, yeah, Anthony Richardson's better than Kyler Murray. They have more weapons. They're better in the trenches. They're just a better team. The Colts absolutely should be up there with the playoff team, winning the AFC South and everything else. And Arizona is in year number 2 of Jonathan Gannon trying to rebuild the team. So they're in different spots, and for the most part, you felt like the Colts took it to them. If you said who won the 2 days of practice, the Colts won the 2 days of practice. I know there might have been times where Marvin Harrison, Jr. got loose, or, Kyler Murray had a good drive, an 11-on-11 or 7-on-7s. I get all that, but in the end, it looked like the Colts were a much better team. And they were at home, they're comfortable and everything else. That flips, and for the first time, I feel like through training camp and obviously the preseason, the first 2 preseason games at home, we get a little uncomfortable. We get to see how they react to maybe being a little bit uncomfortable. You're on the road, okay? You're not at home. So that changes things a little bit. And you're up against a Cincinnati Bengals team that, for the most part, KB, I think you feel the way I do. I have a pretty good, deal of respect for him. If Joe Burrow is out there, I know, Jamar Chase won't be there, but if Joe Burrow is out there slinging it around, it is a good test. Last week we talked about things we wanted to see and things we didn't want to see. And some of those apply to the next couple days, including the preseason game, the joint practices. And that is, you don't want to hear from all, we're Joel on, Stephen Holder tomorrow. You don't want to hear from these people on the ground there in Cincinnati that the defensive backs were having some bad days against Joe Burrow. I'm interested. Okay, how does this big bad defensive line of the Colts, how do they react, right? How does Anthony Richardson look when he's not at home, when he's not in Westfield, when he's against a team, again, that could very well be a playoff team? So I am interested in this week. It feels like the first 2 weeks were kind of dead, right? Arizona not nearly the team that was going to contend with the Colts. And now the Colts are looking at somebody who many people probably believe are as good as them and probably many people believe are better than them this season. So I think there's, I don't want to say a lot on the line, but this is an interesting week to see how we're going to feel when we have basically 2 weeks to kill time before week 1.
Fox 59 it is, coming up Thursday night along with your Amazon Prime. So for those out there that are not Amazon Primers, you will get the Colts. That is Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit, I believe Kaylee Hartung, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so, yeah.
Is the sideline reporter there.
I sat next to her at an SEC tournament back in the day.
Really?
Watching,
yeah, she is kind of an SEC.
Well, that's when she first got going.
Background. I think she does great work.
Watching Mississippi State basketball on a Thursday afternoon at 4:15.
So that's what you'll get.
She's come a long way.
On Thursday, this is the same format of last year. The Colts were in Philly this day last year for a joint session. Then they played the Eagles in that final preseason game. So again, just 3 preseason games for the NFL, and the Colts will have their schedule done a lot earlier than other teams. You'll have a good amount of teams play this weekend. Roster cuts a week from today.
Do you still want, I mean, obviously, I think the answer to this is yes, but if the Bengals don't play anyone on Thursday, you don't care. You want starters at least a half. It doesn't matter if it's second stringers, third stringers, does not matter.
Nope.
Because I agree
with
you.
Yep. Yeah. You need your guys out there. Richardson's different. Richardson ain't Burrow. I mean, just to boil it down as simple as I can. Joe Burrow actually even played a little bit already in the preseason, which is not normal for him. You walk outside today and you want to go to you want to be tailgating at a college football game.
You absolutely
today.
do.
That was my feeling. I opened the door and thought, damn, I wish I was loading the car right now.
Someone needs to make keg and eggs, brisket later on in the day. It's 56 degrees right now.
I'll sit in traffic for a half hour somewhere. Just get me in the lot.
Oh, half an hour. We'll do more than that. It's only supposed to be 74 degrees.
It's Purdue football here locally. Let's not act like we're an SEC country.
Hey, settle down. I've been beat over the head with Purdue's going to be better than what I think. Okay,
Mark,
we'll see.
Are we alive in the YouTube chat?
Oh boy!
Oh yeah, you guys really set me up for failure there. The nice comments quickly went away after they were not selected.
They went back to political comments and other sorts of
more like Dykton, you suck. And I'm
okay.
Well, I hear that on my family chat every night.
So we handed out a fantasy ownership there. We'll continue to do it. We'll do our league draft here coming up in a couple weeks, and again, we'll have a fantasy guest on later this week. One thing to mention later in today's show, 9 o'clock hour, it was a great read. GQ Sports wrote, I would say, a very long-form feature on Tyrese Haliburton. Just prior to the start of the Olympics, Andrew Greif wrote that for GQ, and I think Pacers fans out there would find it very interesting. I thought some really enlightening quotes from Tyrese Haliburton. So Andrew's going to join us here coming up in the 9 o'clock hour to share more about that. There's a great anecdote in there, Andy, where Haliburton, you go back to last May, he's in one of the pace cars at the Indy 500 parade, so the Saturday before the race, and he found himself at one point kind of going down. I don't know if it was Pennsylvania or up Meridian, but he thought to himself, wow, can you imagine this after a championship?
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, I think you talk to diehard sports fans, and I know there, some people maybe they view the NBA in a different light, but I think if you talk to diehard Indianapolis, Indiana sports fans, and you ask them, what would you rather see, a Pacers title or a Colts title? I think the celebration of a Pacers title is what the majority of people eventually get to. And hearing Haliburton describe that scene, I thought really resonated with me. And I think, again, if you're a Pacer fan, hearing your star think about that is exactly what you want to hear. So, again, we'll have Andrew join us coming up around 9 o'clock.
Yeah, so Andrew Greif, he's going to join us at 9 o'clock, like you mentioned. Reading the piece, and this is something I know we've talked about on this show, but, it has to be. And he got some quotes, and I think this is, I think a good interviewer. I'd like to see this, TV, radio, whatever it may be. But at some point, Tyrese goes from, kind of a kid, middle school, high school, that was small. He was a shrimp. He basically, you didn't think he was going to cut it. And then, the guy becomes a great player at the end of high school, and he goes to Iowa State, and he goes to the NBA. but he's very anonymous in the NBA. You know, he's in Sacramento. He's anonymous in the NBA. You know, he's going to obviously have a lot of money and his life has changed. But, you know, in the last couple years, the move here to Indianapolis has sent him into stardom. And it's a young guy that has went from, he's going to make millions of dollars in his career to an all-NBA team, to a max deal team, to, on the Olympic team. And that's obviously where Andrew got the access to Tyrese Haliburton. But, the stages of Haliburton are interesting to me. And then the stage of going from good player, very good player in the NBA, to superstardom, to life-changing exposure, if you will, it really interests me a lot. And that's, the ascension the last few years that Tyrese Haliburton has had. And all I can think of, KB, is, boy, that must be pretty cool.
It's a nice life, is what you're saying?
Yeah, that must be pretty cool. I mean, at one point, he's thinking, I'm being cut from, top-level AAU teams to, now I'm a $300 million man who's hanging out with Kevin Durant and LeBron James in Paris, right, for Team USA. So, I mean, it's been pretty good for him, man.
Walking out of a van full of hotties, too.
Well, yeah.
Not too bad,
From what I can tell, Tyrese seems very content with his significant other right now.
If people don't know what Mark Dykton means, is Tyrese pulled up to the club after they won the gold, and it was him and a buddy and about 7 women. Woo! Good for him.
Yeah, I think being a teammate of...
I'll never have to worry about that.
Andrew wrote this. Thank you for clarifying that. Andrew wrote at some point, being a teammate of an entire wing of the Hall of Fame is a pretty good thing, and that's what he just accomplished with being a part of Team USA.
The wake-up call van rolls up. We're like if our wives want to walk out with us.
It's just dudes.
9 o'clock. Yeah, I was going to say, a far cry.
It's sports radio.
From that.
It's just a bunch of dudes. So, Andrew will join us at 9 o'clock. Coming up at 8 o'clock, we'll get to Joel Erickson of the Indianapolis Star. All right, coming up next, your scores from last night. I'm sure Mark has all the Reds gear to get ready for a morning check down, their big win over Toronto. So we'll do that coming up next. Appreciate you hanging out with us. It's a Tuesday right here, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Checkdown. Omaha! On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Colts are already in Cincinnati this afternoon. They will have a joint practice with the Bengals ahead of Thursday night's preseason finale. A week from today, they've got to cut that roster from 90 to 53. What questions will need to be answered here in the next week? We'll hit on that coming up. Andy Sweeney, not too busy of a morning check down here.
No, not too much. Like you mentioned, tonight the practice there in Cincinnati. Obviously, the Colts were off yesterday. The big news of yesterday, and it's big news literally, I guess you could say figuratively as well, defensive lineman Rayquan Davis activated from the non-football injury list. So we'll see if he is a go tonight. At some point, he's going to need to get on the field. But, you know, we talk about the 53-man roster, KB. That was a guy, it's like, hey, if he doesn't get here soon enough, is he going to make the team? Like, I think that was going to be a question mark as we went later into the week if he didn't play in preseason game number 3, if he didn't practice this week. But it looks like Rayquan is back. And again, one of the 2 pickups in free agency. Help me with this guy's name. Mike, is it Panasai? How do you say his name? He's cut yesterday.
I thought he was signed. Mike P., right?
Mike P., he was signed?
Yeah, I thought he was here.
Oh, yeah, they added him. I apologize. And linebacker Mike Smith Jr. They waived Josh Sills yesterday.
Right, and, you know, to Josh Sills, 98% of Colts fans will say, never heard of him. He actually played a decent amount of snaps in relief last season.
He could have been close to making the roster.
I think he was a potential 53-man roster guy.
It's a bummer for him.
Who does that help? It helps Danny Pinter. Shout out to Ball State. It helps maybe even a guy like Dalton Tucker, an undrafted free agent. So we'll nerd out over that stuff a little bit later. Again, 8 o'clock kick on Thursday night, like we said in the opening segment, Amazon Prime and Fox 59. So locally, that will be picked up here in our markets. Mark, go ahead. Cue the Reds highlights. Heavy bias to Mark Dykman.
What do you mean?
Jealousy over 6-3 winners. Those are the Reds. Very quiet Monday Major League Baseball locally. Are the White Sox on track to set a record?
Yeah, I think that's been the case for quite a while now.
I think so.
I should preface by saying
to actually do it.
The record, 30 wins, as we are 10 days away from September. Are we on track? What is the record? 39.
We need to look it up. Scotty, what's
I'm sure
the record?
Scotty's got it. Like,
come on, Scotty. I'm sure he's memorized it. Yeah, they lost last night.
They lose to the Giants. Pirates lose to the Rangers. Indianapolis Indians on the road this week. They will have the Louisville Bats. I assume that is Tucker Barnhart and company at Victory Field coming up next.
Someone's got to get my man Tucker Barnhart in the pros for 20 free. Get him in the big show for 22 days. Isn't that what he needs for the full 10 years for the pension?
John, correct.
Somebody get my man in there for just 22 days is all he needs. 22 days. That's it. You got anything else? Is that the shortest morning check down we've ever had?
Well, I do feel like we should mention this because we talked about it to end yesterday's show. Gosder Shareless peeing on someone on that flight.
Yeah.
You have the latest? Okay.
He had a statement, which, you know, you always are very in tune to what these statements are going to be. And
these brainiacs.
Again, this is Gosder Shareless, former Colts offensive lineman. I believe I said this to you, Andy. He would be near the top, if not at the top, of most intimidating humans I've ever come across. The report yesterday was, I believe, over the Atlantic at some point. Gosder urinated on a fellow passenger.
Right, going to Dublin.
So Logan to Dublin there. That would be Boston Airport, of course, had to be reverted back to Boston. Gosder's statement: I'd like to address the media reports about me that surfaced today regarding a situation that occurred on board a flight to Ireland this past weekend. The flight was unexpectedly delayed for approximately 4 hours. It did not take off until 12:30 a.m. In preparation for the unexpected overnight flight, I took a sleeping medication that I don't normally use, which resulted in behavior that is not representative of my character, and I would like to apologize to the passengers and flight crew. That is in your notes app.
Okay. I did hear JMV talking about it. Of course, the way he talked about it yesterday is, boy, how did this guy not have any stage fright?
I've all the sleep medication I've ever.
I think the statement details the reason why he did not have stage fright.
I mean, we all are sitting here horrified, but wanting the particulars of this story, right? As gory and as disgusting as they are, we kind of want to know fully what happened. That's how I find myself wanting to know what happened here.
Well, and you can call me a weird, sick human, but if I'm on that flight and I'm at least 2 rows away from the incident, I want the flight going to Dublin. We don't need to turn around.
Just push through the Atlantic is
Now,
what you're saying?
It sounded like maybe there was some physicality between the 6'7",
Well,
300-pound
yeah.
Gosder, Sherless, so obviously that maybe would throw a wrench into those plans. But, I mean, if you took a vote of the entire plane, you're getting 260 continue to go.
Without a
and you're getting
doubt.
4 no's, right?
Yeah, I mean, if this happened to like me or like any of us, they would just tie us up to a chair, wouldn't they? For the remainder of the 8 hours we're going to be in the air.
Pour
and then...
some hot coffee on the urine. Coffee smells better than urine, and let's go.
Man.
He took it out.
Ugh. Can they go down where they are in the plane and get the person's suitcase so they could have at least a change of clothes, or maybe their carry-on, they had like a different shirt in there?
They have plastic bags. I mean, if you travel with children, I'm sure you've had urine-soaked clothing at some point. So you're like, oh, here, throw it in a bag, and we're good to go. Let's keep going.
Urine-soaked onesie slightly different than a 6'7", 300-pounder.
How many teams did this guy play for? The reason I ask
He's
is
definitely a Lion, and then I believe a Colt, and for some reason the Buccaneers are sticking out.
there's at least another team. The reason is every NFL team that employed this guy was hoping that yesterday and even today, when this story got reported, they didn't use like the Colts were like, don't use former Colt and have him, in action week 2, right? Use the Buccaneers. Use somebody else.
Have Getty Images show up with somebody
exactly.
else.
Have Getty Images
He
not
might
use
have
the
been a
Colts.
first-round pick of the Lions, now that I think about
he
it.
was.
You are correct.
I think he
17th
was.
pick overall in the
Wow.
2008 draft. He played for the Lions, the Colts, and the Bucs.
Who drafted him? Matt Millen? I mean, he's not a wide receiver, but 2008 was that
Him
Matt
and
Millen?
Costanzo, he was Boston College, right, Mark? I think him and Costanzo had a little bit of a
yes,
connection there.
Boston College, yes.
Yeah. I mean, he was that 2013 free agent class.
Sure.
Of LaRon Landry and Donald Thomas and Gosder Sherless and Eric Walden. I mean, that was the big class before the Frank Gores of the world and Andre Johnson 2015. So shout out to Gosner and him peeing on the flight. Sounds like due to sleeping medication.
If I was that
Go ahead,
passenger, I'd just ask for an extra, Guinness when we landed.
Well, give me like $1,000 in some sort of a credit or something, so I
Yeah.
don't have to pay for my flight home.
Turn around. Who wants to turn around and
What
start
year-
that all
I mean,
over
if you
again?
can get a free international flight out of it,
You
call
do
me
it.
crazy.
You
It's
do
not
it.
the end of the world.
Is it considered
No.
like a biohazard issue?
Or if I could sue, I mean, if you could sue him for some money too, I mean,
Well, you can
certainly
sue
he's
if you
got
want.
it.
You can sue anyone you want.
Yeah.
I'll sue you guys right now.
Yeah, but
There
then
are
you're-
worse things I've heard of on a flight. Let me just go there.
You sue and then you're stuck in court. And then what if he does it again? And then it's starting the whole process over again.
Listen, there are worse things in a flight, but that's also a very bad one. I just want to be clear.
No,
That's
I
also
mean,
not a good one that I want to live
It's not
through.
ideal. Not as ideal as the weather
No.
outside right now.
I'm just
but
saying.
It's not the end of the world either.
What year was he a free agent here in Indy?
2013 was that
So
big free
that was
agent
that
class.
was that the last year that the Colts were allowed to get free agents? Never mind. It's a bad
no.
joke. It's a bad joke. I'm
Tw-
kidding.
2015,
I'm
they certainly
kidding.
did
I'm
that.
kidding. So, all right, there's your morning check down. Coming up on the other side, who's on the 53-man roster, who isn't? Plus, I got to get one thing off my chest. We'll do it next. Appreciate you hanging out with us. It's a Tuesday right here on The Fan.
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Week from today, NFL teams must cut that roster from 90 to 53. We used to have kind of incremental cuts on the NFL calendar here in August, but that is not the case. Just one big one, 90 to 53, due next Tuesday at 4 o'clock. Then kind of that following 24 hours, Andy, is always a big waiver claim time. The Colts have actually nabbed a Kenny Moore, a Jack Doyle from those waiver claims. So
there's some valuable guys that will be on the streets in a week.
It's nothing to turn your head at there. One question I did pose, I've got an article up on 1075thefan.com. If I set the over-under at 1.5 defensive back waiver claims come next week, where would you go?
I guess I would go over. What do you think?
Is that you going over because you hope or because you believe?
No, just because of hope. If I go by belief, it'll probably be under.
Yeah, I think I'm with you.
If we're being honest.
To me, it makes beyond total sense to make one at corner and one at safety. But, again, hope and belief are two different things on that end. But we're now entering this period. August 20th on the calendar. Just one joint practice left. Just one preseason game left. I mean, there's only about 2 or 3 more opportunities for these guys to really make a strong impression. Today is one of those days with the Colts in Cincinnati for that joint practice.
Yeah, I feel like, and you tell me, I would ask 2 things. Who do you think, and listen, the answer so commonly has been Jelani Woods, and that's one we've even talked about a little bit today, KB. By the way, you're blowing your nose over there. You have had the sniffles, I think. Mark helped me here for 3 weeks.
4
You're
weeks.
like
Really?
me in November when I came in here every day snotting up the place. Yeah. Are you okay?
A little morning allergy, but I actually don't feel like I've been blowing the nose too much lately.
Oh, I feel like you've been blowing the nose a lot. I'm just worried about you if you're doing that in August.
Good to go.
What November, December is going to look
Good to go. If I got COVID, I'll let you know.
Some Zyrtec in your coffee.
Oh, goodness.
Morning Allegra every morning.
I like that. I don't know. I mean, is Woods the most bubblicious guy? Otherwise, I don't know.
You good cutting Sam Ellinger?
Well, yeah, I am. If it comes down to it, listen, I'm going to believe Shane Steichen. If Steichen says I want to roll with 2 quarterbacks and we'll have a practice squad guy in the new rules, we can bring up a guy like a Jason Bean when it comes to game day. I'm fine with that. I told you
Jason Bean could be a play away from being your backup.
I know. I told you that you. Joel A. Erickson, who we're going to have on here in about 15 minutes on the program, and James Boyd of The Athletic. I looked at all of you guys' different 53-man roster.
Sound like Rosie's verb tense right now.
I was doing Sopranos there. Projections. You had 3 quarterbacks. Boyd and Joel both just had 2. So you bring that up. That is actually one of the differences that you guys had.
Yeah, and again, it's all of how much do you want to protect the third QB. They have not cut Sam Ellinger before, so they've always had him. Now, again, we have the new rule change, which you just brought up. You can have a third quarterback on your practice squad, and that guy can dress on game days. Now, to get him to the practice squad, you've got to cut him.
Right.
So that is the little bit of the risk. And again, I don't want to act like it's the end of the world exposing Sam Ellinger to waivers, but it's just how much do you value the third QB? If you value him, you don't expose him to waivers at all. If you don't value him, or you think you can get him through scot-free, then you just go ahead and do that and play that game. So I don't think it's the most pressing question in the world. I don't think I'm going to be undressing the Colts by any means if they were to do that.
Cut Sam Ellinger
a week from Tuesday, but it is something on the checking of the box list. Speaking of checking of the boxes, I do want to add one more thing on defensive back while we're on it. Nick Cross had a really nice game on Saturday night. We talked about that on yesterday's show. Again, he was playing a little bit more strong safety versus in camp. He's been more of a free safety, so I do think that is a little bit of a conversation they have to have. But I want to make sure we're very clear on this, or I'm very clear on this. Just because Nick Cross had a good game does not mean your defensive back questions are over. For me, when we talk about the secondary, Andy, there are 4 boxes that need to be checked in the secondary. Nick Cross is one of 4 boxes.
Right.
I just said to you, I would make 2 waiver claims. I'd make a waiver claim at corner and safety. So what are the 4 boxes? Nick Cross is obviously probably the most notable box. He's a starter. He's playing a position that has been a little uncertain over the years next to Julian Blackmon. Okay, that's one of them. What are the 3 others? Are Juju Brents and Jalen Jones good?
Well, good in which way? Like, are they ready to go, or are they
good at
injured?
football?
Yeah. Well, I think
Let's
they're
not talk health.
Yeah, I think
are they good enough?
I think those two are going to be good enough, but I think the problem is always depth. But continue.
Okay, so
but it's worth asking. I mean, Juju Brents has played 9 games in the NFL, and he's already got an injury this preseason. It's worth asking the question.
Of the 4 boxes in the secondary, 2 are health-related, and 2 are these guys good? Is Nick Cross good is one box. Are Jalen Jones and Juju Brents good? That's another box. Then you get to the 2 health boxes.
Right.
The 2 health boxes are probably more, can Julian Blackmon stay healthy? And then at corner, it's probably more Juju Brents because he's been the oft-injured guy. So to me, when we're talking about the overall secondary and the lack of moves for the Colts, you hear Chris Ballard with John last week, and so much of it is Nick Cross focused in that safety position. And I get that. That's been the dominant topic. But don't think for a second, just because Cross had a couple nice tackles on Saturday night means you eliminate the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th box that I just laid out. There still are other questions in the secondary, some of them at corner, and 2 major health questions as well. So I'll probably beat that drum a lot here over the next week just because Nick Cross, and I do think, credit to Nick Cross, he's had a couple nice preseason games here. That does not eliminate the urgency in the secondary at all for me because there still are other layers to this that should not be forgotten.
Yeah, I feel like it deadened it a little bit by the way he played and the fact that Arizona didn't play anybody, right, in that preseason game. So, preseason game number 1, it was a lot of when guys made mistakes, we were pointing it out, with Dallas Flowers. I felt like a lot of people went at him. Listen, the reality is, and I've said it, that the depth is not good enough for a 17-game schedule, in my opinion. And can they do something here? Cut day coming up in a week, 8 days. Perhaps they can. And I think possibly if somebody is out there, and I don't have any names because, there's always guys that are cut that are at least a little bit of a surprise, right? That always happens. And by the way, there's still free agents out there. I will say this, and I feel like the Colts fan will mostly agree with this. If Anthony Richardson goes out there, and I'm going to bring this back to the secondary here in a second, KB. If Anthony Richardson goes out, and God forbid, I hope this doesn't happen, but if he has injuries this year, and again, I don't want to put a number on how many games, but if he has injuries enough to where, I have respect for Joe Flacco. I want to be clear, okay? So do I think he could come in and win games and guide the Colts through some murky waters? I absolutely do. But let's say we get to the end of the year and the Colts don't make the playoffs, and one of the big reasons they don't make it, KB, is because of Anthony Richardson's injury. To a certain extent, just about every team in the NFL, not every team, but just about. There's some bad ones, okay? New England, perhaps the Giants. There's probably 6 or 7 teams that if their starting quarterback goes down, the backup comes in, and it really doesn't affect their season that much. But like the Jets last year, they went from being a team that could be in the Super Bowl to being a team that nobody cared about because of Aaron Rodgers. So if Anthony Richardson were to get injured and miss a prolonged amount of time, I don't think fans, in fact, I know I would not, I'm not going to club a guy like Chris Ballard over the head on that. But with the secondary specifically, I mean, you just gave us 4 boxes that need to be checked. And how many are actually checked? Actually checked.
Well,
one?
Well,
the answer might be none.
Well,
Okay?
the answer's none. I mean, Cross and Brents and Jones still have to prove themselves.
Yeah, I'm saying even if you liked one of those guys
Sure.
and you were being nice, saying, okay, Nick Cross has won the job. I'm ready. I'm ready for Nick Cross to have the season that he could have. Okay, maybe one of those boxes is checked. If, early on in the year, if one of those frontline guys, if Juju Brents, who played 9 games last year, if he has an injury, or if Julian Blackmon, who has had injury issues, if they go down, there's not going to be the excuse, well, our starter got injured. That's why we didn't have success at that position. That's not going to be the same valid excuse that if someone like Anthony Richardson goes down. It's just not. And fans are going to hold Ballard's feet to the fire because everyone knew that the starters even maybe aren't good enough and the backups definitely aren't.
Colts will get a look at a familiar face
Who's
today. Zach Moss is a Cincinnati Bengal.
I think Zach Moss could have an okay year there. I really do.
I can't even. Is the kid from Illinois, Chase Brown? Is he still a Bengal? I remember he had a couple big runs against the Colts last season.
Yeah, I guess he is. I'm interested in what they do there.
Houston,
yeah, because Mixon's gone.
Down there.
Can I get one other thing off my chest before we have Joel A. Erickson at 8 o'clock on? So yesterday, I feel like I need to say this. I didn't say this in the proper way yesterday. So we had Nate Atkins, also from the Indy Star, on. We had him on yesterday. And one thing that he mentioned, kind of in passing, and I think there's probably some validity to it. I think there's probably a lot of validity to it. And that is maybe one reason that Ballard is not going out and getting more older players, veteran-type players, is he's worried that the coaching staff will opt to play the vets over the young guys. And Ballard wants to see, he's constructing the team. He wants to see the young guys. And I feel like when it comes to guys, and I think Ballard has this, that there is an obsession with drafting a guy and that guy, you building him up and then ultimately paying him, right? I feel like that is a big deal to what the Colts are trying to accomplish. And to some extent, it makes sense. If you draft these guys, that means you're nailing the draft. It also means you get them on these contracts that are very team-friendly, and that's a good thing. Free agency a lot of time is overspending. I understand that if you're Chris Ballard. But fans, and this is how I view it, fans don't care about that. The most overrated thing, one of the most overrated things in sports is thinking that you have to draft and develop your entire team to enjoy a championship or a deep run in the playoffs or whatever it may be. KB, you may feel differently than I do, but I know, me and Jimmy Cook talk about this. The Yankees are always beat over the head. Well, you can just go buy a championship. Yeah, and when I'm going deep into October, that's a lot of fun. It sure as hell is more fun than going out 2 months prior and having a bunch of guys that aren't as good as the guys that I have. And so I think fans, we get so caught up in, well, he's a third-round pick, so we got to keep him, or, they drafted him and developed him, so that means so much to Ballard. It's like, that's fine, but in the end, whether it's free agents, whether it's homegrown guys, whether it's a guy that's a mercenary on a 9-month deal for you, fans only care about winning. And I didn't say that in the right way yesterday, and I just wanted to say it this time. It frustrates me that everything has to be, he's got to be a homegrown guy. No, he doesn't.
Yeah,
he
doesn't. I totally believe with the thought, to be honest with you. I mean, they signed Mike Mitchell, they signed Rodney McLeod, they've signed older guys before. Sure, the GM wants to play his younger guys. Yeah, probably if you're going to make him pick, but I don't know. I think that's a little bit of a misnomer, if I'm going to be totally honest on that end. Now, I think there's a time and place. I think the New England Patriot fan base would like to see some young guys play this year. Where Matthew Judon for a third-round pick, not the end of the world to them. The Colts aren't in that position.
No.
So I think that differs on that as well.
All right, let's take a break. Who's in, who's out? We talked about the 53-man roster. Plus, what's at stake this week for some of the Colts players that we've mentioned and how much do the starters play coming up on Thursday. Joel A. Erickson from the Star, he joins us next. 8 o'clock hour, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Well, after 2 o'clock today, Colts and Bengals down in Cincinnati. They actually have a real practice facility now. Didn't they used to be Nippert Stadium if they had to go?
It was either that
or Cincinnati's bubble, I think, if they had to go indoors.
I know Boomer Esiason talked about it back in the 80s and early 90s. It was basically under an overpass in downtown Cincinnati on concrete.
Act like you're changing a tire and you can watch 2 hours of Bengals practice there. I don't think that will be the location for Joel Erickson later today, but he will be en route. Down 74, again, Colts and Bengals, just one joint practice this week, and then they will play 8 o'clock Thursday night for the preseason finale, and Joel joins us now. Joel, a question I threw to Andy earlier in the show. I know we're a week away from it, but a week from roster cuts, if I set the over-under 1.5 waiver claims in the secondary for the Colts, you would say what?
Oh, I'm going to go with the under.
Are you even going to go with one, or are you just going to literally break Colts fans' hearts and go 0?
I think there's maybe a chance at one, but when he's made waiver claims in the secondary before, it usually hasn't been guys who could necessarily help right away. It's been
long corners he wanted to draft, right?
Yes, typically. And so, I don't think you're going to find. I think this might break Colts' hearts. I don't think you're going to find help. The kind of help that can play right away on the waiver wire. You maybe find it if somebody is a wash in corners and cut someone who can play a little bit, but I can't imagine any team is that deep at corner.
Joel Erickson with us here from the start again. He'll be there. Joint practices coming up this week. Preseason game number 3 on Thursday. Julian Blackmon and Nick Cross flipping back and forth. Strong safety, free safety. Do you think that's what they do when they get into the regular season? And then basically Nick Cross, with the way he's played maybe the last week to 10 days, do you believe he's flat out won that job next to Blackmon?
Yeah, I think barring something crazy in the next 2 days, I think Cross is going to open as a free. And the reason I think it's going to be mostly free safety for him is just Blackmon just does he's better with the communication, and so they've said before several times that strong safety position is more based on communication, and so I think that you'll probably see Blackmon play most of the time at strong and Cross mostly the free.
Again, he's Joel Erickson with the Star. Colts and Bengals joint practice coming up later today. Joel, how much should we pay attention at tight end to Jelani Woods was a Frank Reich coaching staff draft pick versus Will Mallory was a Shane Steichen coaching staff draft pick?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing is that Will Mallory has played for Shane Steichen and Woods didn't get the chance to. So it's part of it that it's the last staff or whatever. But I think the bigger piece is that they've actually seen Will Mallory play in games where they haven't seen it with Woods. I've been wondering if there's a Jelani Woods blocking component that I'm missing.
Seems like he's been a little better there this year. Are my eyes deceiving me?
That's kind of where I'm at. I think he might be a little bit better there, and if he's a better blocker than Mallory, I think that adds something into it that maybe we're not taking into account. They've also played him some in the 2 tight end type sets that they like to run out of, and so that was the other thing that sort of made me wonder if I was maybe underrating that a bit.
I wanted to ask you this: do they need to cut Jelani Woods? And let me throw a little context around that. The names I'm about to mention, I've got on my 53-man roster. And you can debate some of these names. I'm not saying any of these are in Sharpie, but I want to mention these names. Sam Ehlinger, Tyler Goodson, Ashton Doolin, Dalton Tucker, Blake Freeland, Taven Bryan, Isaiah Land, Jalen Simpson. All of those are on my 53-man roster. Do you really need to cut all of them? Or, put all of them on your 53-man roster to then cut Jelani Woods, if you follow where I'm going with that?
Yes, I do. There's a couple of those guys, and this is where projecting the roster gets. This is where projecting the roster gets tough.
Sure.
But I'm with you. You can make a case for me that one of those guys could fall off, one of those guys could go on. I'm not necessarily opposed. If you have 5 tight ends, I think one of the things I'm not necessarily opposed to is you're going to have inactive guys every week anyway. If you can play those guys, like that's a position where guys are going to get hurt. It just is. It's one of the most physically demanding positions in football. So I could see that, and you're right. I mean, especially with Rayquan Davis coming back, like Taven Bryan's role, you've got Rayquan Davis activated now. Adetomiwa Adebawore looks like he's taking a big step. To me, Taven Bryan's a guy that I just don't know if I need the extra tackle.
Joel Erickson with us from the Star again. Practices coming up later today. Bengals and Colts preseason game number 3 coming up on Thursday. All right, we're going to do a scale of 1 to 10. You ready, Joel? And you know who it's about. It's about Matt Gay, the kicker, okay? We're talking about the kicker. So last week I was at about a 3. This week I'm at about a 6.5 or so. Where are you? Scale of 1 to 10 last week to this week. Obviously, the other night he missed a couple more kicks, and I thought it was interesting. 30 seconds to go. Shane Steichen throws him out there to kick another field goal.
5, 4, something, 4.5, somewhere in there.
Okay, so that's not very much then. I think Colts fans are probably a little bit higher than you.
Yeah, that's probably true, and they might be right. I just that having a guy who held for the first time in his life on Saturday makes me wonder if there's something there. If we talk to Brian Mason or something and he says no, the holds were perfect, then maybe I change my mind and come up. But holders matter. How fast the ball gets down matters. How it's set up matters. All that stuff is part of it. And I just it sounded to me like that played a role. Not that Spencer Schrader, they needed him to step in, but he just had never done it before.
Spencer Schrader putting the holds bad for Matt Gay to try and win a job on the practice squad. That'd be a great story there. My amateur eye, Joel, it looked like Matt Gay gave Spencer Schrader the pat on the head you've probably given your son after a strikeout in Little League. Like, you'll get him next time. That was after the 53-yarder. After the 44-yarder, the body language looked like, oh, bleep. Is there something wrong with me now that I have hooked 3 field goals here in the preseason? And then, Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard both looked a little bit like, wait a minute, is this something we need to talk about? But to your point, I'm probably with you number-wise. I did say to Andy yesterday, putting a kicker on the practice squad to me isn't the worst idea in the world. Because when it goes for kickers, it can go quickly.
Yeah, kicker is a super volatile position, which is like when they signed Matt Gay, the people who didn't like the signing said, kickers are super volatile unless your name is Justin Tucker. And that is true. It is true that kicking is a super volatile position. I think the biggest thing right now is for the most part, I'm just going, the track record's pretty good. And you assume he'll get back to the track record. But you're right. And the other thing is there's also 16 spots on the practice squad now. So giving a practice squad spot to a kicker is not necessarily, to me, the worst thing in the world, because you have so many spots there.
Yeah, that's kind of my thinking as well. Again, Joel Erickson, 2:20 start time, practice, Colts and Bengals down in Cincy today. Joel, last one. I'm sure you caught the Jim Irsay audio from Saturday night. How much of that do you think it was crazy uncle with the mic at a pep rally, and how much of that was, no, I really believe what I'm saying about Chris Ballard specifically, as he's a blue-chip GM, even though the resume would tell you otherwise?
He hasn't really ever said anything to the contrary. Like, he's always been all in on Ballard. Every time he talks, I think he's been all in on Ballard. And granted, so some people would say, Jim Irsay can be all in on lots of guys at different times. But I do feel like it's different with Ballard. And he didn't even really feel the need to, explain the blue chip comment anymore. So until there's some change or hint that there's anything different there, I'm assuming that he's still all in.
Skyline or La Rosa's at the Batesville exit on the way home, or you care about plumbing in the Erickson household?
I absolutely will not eat Skyline, which is a big point of contention with the other Indy Star co-beat writer, Nate Atkins, who loves it. But I don't believe cinnamon should be in chili at all. That makes no sense to me.
I sat next to Nate last year, Colts at Bengals game in December, and I literally thought the plate was for Grover Stewart when he came back from the line.
Yeah, he's so excited. Clark Wade, who does our video work for us, is also going down with me, though. And from the text message chain last night, it sounded like Clark is my tie-breaking vote, and we don't have to stop there.
Oh, wow. That's a big win there. Well, Nate might need an Uber home then.
He might sneak out at the end of practice and go get some, and that might be his only route to the. I've done La Rosa's before. There was a Reds game I was at where they got the strikeouts, and we just went the next day because we were still there.
Look at that!
Oh, I like that.
I have been to the La Rosa's in Batesville. Solid establishment, assuming that it's still around, still alive. Joel, safe travels down 74, safe travels back, safe travels down Thursday, safe travels back Thursday, and as always, thank you for the time.
Okay, yep. Good to hear from you guys.
Indy Stars, Joel A. Erickson, Skyline, La Rosa's. You care about plumbing. Where are you going?
Yeah, I mean, I would go with La Rosa's on that. I would happen to agree for the most part on the Skyline, although if I'm in a spot, I'll also eat the Skyline. So I don't want to be holier than thou like I'm the fat guy here that's not going to partake if I need to partake. You know, it's funny. If you've ever been, I don't know if you've ever been in the press box area for the Cincinnati Reds. So back in Louisville, we were a Cincinnati Reds affiliate. So we got the affiliate suite there at Great American Ballpark a couple times a year. It was never when the Cubs or Cardinals were rolling through. It was more the Pirates or back in the day the Arizona Diamondbacks or somebody like that. Or the Royals.
Kansas City Royals.
And so you get the affiliate suite. At that time Marty Brenneman would come in and shake hands and kiss babies and do that entire thing. But part of it was they just give you all the food. They let you so they would consistently be bringing in Skyline, consistently be bringing in Penn Station, consistently bringing in La Rosa's Pizza, and it's easily a top 10 moment of my life of the worst I've ever felt about eating, because you're just piling Skyline on top of La Rosa's, on top of turkey from Penn Station, and you just could not feel worse. And to make it worse, the Reds would lose every game 8-3. So there you go.
I don't know if that's necessary.
Well.
Probably need a gallon of Pepto-Bismol afterwards.
I think they lost every single time I went to one of those.
Yeah, I would say I'd compare La Rosa's maybe like the Colts pass catchers. I think I'm good with them, but I'm not 100% sure, and I'd probably go Skyline in the secondary.
Okay, yeah, I think that's probably the right way to do it.
You can eat it, but yeah, I mean, Shelbyville, there's got to be nice bathrooms in that casino. You might need to pull over there.
You got some bubble guts going.
Yeah. You gotta have a little bit more confidence in the wide receivers for the Colts. Come on. Well, let's get some. If Josh Downs is healthy,
I said pass catchers.
Oh, pass
I'm
catchers,
grouping
tight ends, and everything.
Now
and
I
everything
feel like I'm
else.
arguing with Chris Ballard back at the combine when he got mad at me about Brock Bowers.
By the way, did you guys happen to see last night? Speaking of Colts, did not ask this to Joel A. Erickson. I don't know if he pays attention. I don't think I've paid attention. I'm wondering if you've paid attention. But Zaire Franklin last night and Kenny Moore on Twitter were openly talking about how they either need a new DJ at the Colts games or they just need a better playlist at the Colts game.
Now, and this is a topic Kevin Bowen's gotten his wrist slapped for before. I might turn my mic off and let you handle this one.
I'm sorry. Well, see, I don't know the music I assume it's not recent music that Zaire and Kenny like. I would assume maybe it's more 80s and 90s
Zaire and Kenny
themed.
have a little bit more clout than Kevin Bowen and certainly Jake Query.
Boy,
it's a lot of Cougar Mellencamp. It's the Who.
Okay, so that's what I figured. Well, hey, listen, slap Zaire Franklin's hand.
Sure.
Slap Kenny Moore's hand. They're the ones that got 24,000 followers on Twitter.
Yeah.
Not us, not me. I have 8,000 people on Twitter. Come on.
I'll just add this. Just one very simple
Well,
comment.
I don't want to get you in trouble.
Well, you bring it up.
I guess I'm already down
for us to give our opinions. Come on now.
In fairness, I did text you last night. Hey, Zaire and Kenny, they put something on Twitter.
And I was kind of hoping that'd get lost in the shuffle of the 3-hour show. But
fair enough.
You were Johnny on the spot at our most listened to time here at 8:16 in the morning.
Sure.
I do think the general environment could use an injection of life. I'll just go there.
Even every software needs a software update.
And look, there are many layers that contribute to that. Play on the field, primetime atmospheres, an extra pop or two at a tailgate, all of that can contribute to it. Certainly, music can contribute to that. But as I've said before, I think there are many other in-stadium environments that you would call a little bit more lively around the NFL.
I like that.
It was very presidential.
That was, you know what?
Do you think I'll get a call at 10:01 or 10:06?
No, I mean, I don't think that's a hot take. You didn't give a hot take.
Hey, Zaire, if Zaire and Kenny can do it, we can do it, right?
It's Zaire and Kenny. It matters to them. It doesn't matter to me. It's funny.
I thought there were other players that also took. I think it was one of those.
Were there?
Is that our captain going there?
Did everyone just join in?
Lead.
You know what's funny about it? It's like this is where I'm a bad fan in all these things. I don't care about jerseys at all. The new college does this. The new jersey. I don't care about jerseys. You're a Notre Dame fan. I want the traditional Notre Dame jerseys, right? I don't need. And so when they do the Indiana Knights, it's fine, and they they sell
Shamrock Series fan for Notre Dame.
They sell stuff, and I know people, younger people, even people my age. I'm 40. I know they like it. My generation, I guess our generation, they very much like the different jerseys. I don't care about jerseys, and I don't care about pump-up songs. I remember I was covering a Kentucky game, and they always had Kentucky football, of course, not exactly the Colts, okay? Kentucky football always had the It's a Party, that song. It played all the time. It played 900 times.
It's a party,
and all their special teams guys were dancing and everything. Sure. They kicked the ball off, and Tennessee ran it back for a touchdown.
Well, the Colts back in the Manny era, they had that crunk kickoff song. That was, I think, one you had to get the capital E probably needed to be on the ticket when you walk into Lucas Oil Stadium for what you're going to hear. You brought up college football. You have poo-pooed this game a lot here a week from Saturday down in College Station.
Okay.
We have week 1 college football odds.
Inject those into my veins.
You have acted like Notre Dame's playing Little Sisters of the Poor.
Well, I mean, I don't think they are, but Notre Dame's better. I mean, they're better.
You have acted like the game matters none. This is going to be a cakewalk.
Right.
Notre Dame is an underdog in College Station week 1. That is a 2.5-point underdog.
I don't like that
against Mike Elko's Aggies.
I mean, you can't like that. How is Notre Dame year 3 of their coaching
freshman
staff
at left tackle for Notre Dame in week 1? We're used to Notre Dame having an extremely experienced and accomplished offensive line. That's my biggest concern.
The hog mollies.
I like so much of that football team. So much of it. Offensive line makes me, the other night, Maddie's like, gosh, you slept terrible. I couldn't admit to her that it was because I was thinking about the Notre Dame offensive line. I didn't feel like that'd really be great for our relationship, but between you and I, that's what it was.
Why do they have a true freshman there? Did everyone else transfer out because of the transfer policy?
They had 2 tackles, both go pro.
Gotcha.
I don't think they thought both of them won. One would be Blake Fisher from Avon, so that has contributed to it. I'm a little worried. IU is a 21-point favorite over Florida International. Do we have word if Pitbull will be traveling to Bloomington? This is Pitbull's team, right?
He should be.
Can we get Pitbull at Bluebird playing Friday or Saturday night?
I was about to say, where would Pitbull be if he went to Bloomington on Friday or Saturday? Would it be Bluebird?
10-cent beers and Pitbull?
No, I can't.
That place would be electric.
They would
Rocket's
be 10
Pizza next door would overflow with people.
They better not be 10-cent beers. The owners better understand what they're dealing with. Sorry, college kids. Pitbull's in town.
Hey, I'm just here to deliver news to people that tweet at us. Right here, Seaberg chimes in. I second the music. It's not the old tire tunes. It's all the new heavy metal loud garbage.
Oh, boy,
Went to a
Mark.
preseason
That's a shot
game,
at you.
and I've been going to games for 30 years. This new music and Lucas Oil is god-awful.
Who's this motley crew they keep playing?
Zach Franklin would like that tweet, right?
So it's the new heavy metal.
I'm trying to think what new heavy metal they played.
Seaberg is trying to say.
Answer this question. Are we trying to appease players or trying to appease 60,000 in the stands for music? And I mean that in all seriousness.
I feel like there's some classics you can keep in rotation. Like everybody gets up for living on a prayer or something. Like go ahead and leave that in there.
Yeah, we're not saying eliminate the Simba Cam.
Yeah. No, Simba Cam's got to stay.
But
That's a staple.
answer that question for me. Are we going players?
It's a great question.
Is it players or is it 60,000 people paying to be in there?
You should say it's the 60,000, but if Kenny Moore and Zaire Franklin are better 1% because their music's playing and Mellencamp's not, you know where I'm gonna go.
I would say you can mix it in. How about you have coming out of commercial break, you have the songs the players want to hear. And then, in between plays, you have the stuff that gets the fans going.
So I would argue you would flip that. In between plays, you want the players to get hyped. It's coming out of the break, during a commercial.
Yeah, but they're trying to call
and
plays.
Talking on the sidelines.
Right.
That's when you play, Cougar.
Coming out of commercial, though, you got a couple minutes. They can, start bobbing the head and get going. And then they're like, all right, I'm ready for the series.
They're out of breath by the time the play started.
Well, better conditioning then.
Here's the difference, and I think this is the problem with all of this. And Mark, you tell me, because I'm interested what Dykton thinks on this. Okay, I feel like when I was in high school and even college, music was very segregated to groups. Does that make
Zaire
sense?
Franklin only has 23,000 followers.
I'm like, dude, I have over 9,000. How are you an NFL player? You don't have 30,000.
Damn, don't say that to his face.
Well, no, and you're outspoken. You have a very successful podcast. You're going to be a media guy. Come on, Zaire.
Bigger
Got
on
him
TikTok.
50, 60,000. But I feel like there was the heavy metal kids, right? Like the punk kids and the people that listen to country and rap, and it was kind of segregated. There weren't a lot of people that listened to everything. I feel like that has changed so much that rock music has kind of died in a way that I feel like I say kids, I feel like, from 15 to 25, maybe even 30, I feel like that generation is listening together in unison to more hip hop than my generation did.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, would you agree with that? I don't know if KB agrees with that.
I'm scrolling through these mentions, and it is awesome. Mark, can you retweet it?
Oh, the Kenny Moore.
Yeah, just so
original
people
one?
can read the mentions. If people need a good laugh here on this Tuesday morning, here you go.
Well, I was thinking about your dream, Kevin, about how you didn't want to tell Maddie that you're dreaming about the offensive line, but I thought about the meme where it's like the girl sleeping on one side with her back to her husband. She's saying, I wonder if she's thinking about other girls. And then on the other side, it's Kevin. No, I'm thinking about the Notre Dame offensive line.
What's his name?
Anthony Knapp is a true freshman starting.
Is that his name?
Kyle Field.
Where's Anthony Knapp from?
He actually is from Georgia, which I'm thinking if
Okay.
you're going to start a true freshman, a Georgia State high school product.
Right.
Okay. I mean, he's not from Montana.
Well, why didn't he go to Georgia? That would be my rebuttal. He went to Notre Dame.
Notre Dame can recruit
Okay.
Georgia.
Yes, they can. They recruit nationally. That's what I hear.
Colts on the road today, on the road Thursday. So we won't have to worry about any music. I guess September 8th. That's when we'll have to worry.
Guy says, don't play Jack and Diane.
Well, that's a staple, too, I
You
think.
got to scroll through the mentions. They are too good on that. Coming up at 9 o'clock, I mentioned this a little earlier. Tyrese Haliburton, great feature written on him. GQ Sports, and I think if you are a fan of the Pacers, fan of Haliburton, fan of, frankly, indie sports in general, there are a couple anecdotes that author Andrew Greif shared that I think would get fans pretty excited. So looking forward to that conversation. A cool profile on Tyrese. We'll do that around 9 o'clock. It was not an abundant sport night outside of my Reds getting back on track. Let's go ahead and check it down.
The Morning Checkdown. Omaha! On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
All right, like you mentioned, KB, 2 o'clock joint practices between the Colts and
2:20
Bengals.
officially, I wanna
2:20.
say.
So today, tomorrow, preseason game number 3 coming up on Thursday. All we know right now is per his conversation with JMV last week, Chris Ballard saying, the starters, Anthony Richardson, will at least play a half. So that is expected on the other end. We don't know exactly Bengals-wise who will play on Thursday, but the joint practices coming up this week. Some moves yesterday and some good news. Colts did activate big defensive lineman Rayquan Davis yesterday from the non-football injury list, so could be back at practice as early as today. They also added a center, Mike P. is what we're calling him, linebacker Mike Smith Jr. as well, and waving guard Josh Sills. his injury might have kept him off the 53-man roster. He was very much, KB, going to be a guy kind of on the edge of that roster.
Yeah, I'd say if you're a fan of Danny Pinter and Ball State, you honestly are like, okay, that's not the end of the world. That's actually probably a good thing for my fandom. I do want to get to Rayquan Davis in just a second, Andy, because, I mean, you look at it, they paid him $14 million over 2 years. That's nothing to sneeze at. What exactly would his role look like? I want to hit on that here on the other side. As we said, super quiet day, quiet night in sports. Again, the Fever will not play all week long at Minnesota coming up on Saturday. Were those Reds highlights you were getting ready to play?
No.
Getting Fox Sports Ohio turned up over there.
6-3 Reds winners over the Blue Jays yesterday. The White Sox continue to lose. Indians on the road this week. So no Victory Field action until
They won 6 straight, by the way.
Yeah,
6 straight
swept
wins.
St. Paul, right?
Yes, they did.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you got anything else to add, I was just going to run down a couple high school games
Yeah,
coming
go
up
ahead.
here in Week 1. Friday Night Lights, weather looks pretty good. Looking ahead here to Week 1, your number 1 teams in the polls, these are the respective classes, 6A down to 1A. Ben Davis, Decatur Central, New Pal, Jay Cutler, and Ken Dilger's Heritage Hills, Lutheran, and North Judson. Those are our number 1 teams in the state. Among the games of note in Week 1, a little Westfield Center Grove action, Zionsville Pike, Ellen, LC, Mount Vernon, and Noblesville, Cathedral, and Ben Davis, Chatard, Burbuff, Roncalli, and Southport. Some games to note here as we get high school football started coming up Friday night. It's got to be one of the later starts to the high school football season in a while.
Yeah, I need to decide what game I'm going to go to also. I got to pick a game to go to. I got to figure that out in the next couple days.
Warren is I thought I saw Warren is at Fort Wayne Snyder.
Is that
Which is a great
true?
game,
Okay,
but
well.
yeah, I don't see you driving up to Fort Wayne.
Probably not going to do
for
that.
that one,
No,
so-
probably not going to do that.
LNLC is not too far from you.
That might be, although that's not going to be a close game.
Oh, it's not?
Or is it going to be a close game? I don't know.
I would venture. I know
Okay.
LC brings back a lot, but I'd venture to guess that would be.
Okay, well, that might be the one we go to then. So
Well, you need to ask-
I'll report live.
Maybe a little Kyle and then rip at some point
Yeah.
this week. Maybe a
Okay.
little Greg Straw on Friday.
All right, so good stuff. There's your morning check down. Reminder, Andrew Greff is going to join us from GQ. He'll join us in the 9 o'clock hour. He had the piece following in Paris Tyrese Haliburton, so we'll talk with him. But coming up next, what's the deal, as KB mentioned, with defensive lineman Rayquan Davis? Plus, did you hear what Tua said about his former coach? We'll tell you. It's all coming up next. Appreciate you hanging out with us on this Tuesday. Wake Up Call 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Fourth quarter, week one, Colts Texans. We're back here at Lucas Oil Stadium. Mark Titan
I feel right at home now.
on the ones and twos. Good Tuesday morning to you. Thank you for spending it with us. This is the Wake Up Call. Kevin Bowen, Andy Sweeney, Mark Titan with you here. We'll talk a little fantasy football coming up Thursday. I know it's a time for a lot of fantasy football drafts. We'll have Dave Richard from CBS Sports on to. We'll probably field some listener questions. You know, any thoughts, any overall drafting philosophies you want to throw at them? We'll do that coming up on Thursday. Continue to give away spots in our league. Certainly some heavy candor and I would say ripping of an old coach. We'll play that audio from Tua Tagovailoa coming up here in just a second. Roster move for the Colts yesterday, Andy, as they get on the practice field in Cincinnati today. Rayquan Davis. And again, this is your marquee free agent, not named Joe Flacco. Rayquan Davis, 2-year, $14 million. This is a large human that has been dealing with one of the odder 3-week absences I have seen in my years covering the NFL. He participated in the spring, shows up to training camp at Grand Park, and all of a sudden there's some blood pressure issue that led to, again, a 3-week absence for him. We did not see him at all at Grand Park outside of just occasionally being on a stationary bike. 6'7", 325-pound individual. The thought with Rayquan Davis is you sign him and you're lessening the burden on Grover Stewart as a run stopper. Remember when Grover was out for a month and a half, you wilted as a run defense last year. And I think another thought is, can you keep a little bit less on the plate of DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart quarters 1 through 3? If you can rest them a little bit, now is that fastball humming a little bit more like the second inning versus the sixth inning when you get to the fourth quarter? I think that is your thought there with Rayquan Davis. So, again, he's got a handful of practices over the next 2.5 weeks to get ready for week one. He plays a position where you rotate a lot, so it's not like you need him out there for a ton of snaps, but this is something to watch here over the next couple of weeks.
Well, I think it's a low-key big deal. I mean, this was a guy, it's not as big of a deal as, Josh Downs. Is he going to be ready week 1 and week 2 of the season? And obviously anything with the shoulder of Anthony Richardson. But you tell me, KB, I mean, you signed only a couple guys in free agency. Like you mentioned before the break, you gave this guy a 2-year, $14 million deal. And I think you need him. I think you need somebody who can, I think the main thing would be if there is obviously an injury. And we saw the suspension of Grover Stewart last year. You can't be pathetic against the run or below average against the run, however you say it. That's definitely one item. But I think the more important item is, you mentioned secondly, and that is, earlier on in games to be able to get Buckner and Grover off the field just enough, and they'll have to figure out the snap count to make this work. Get them off the field just enough, but still be a really good defense and still be solid on that line, but get them off the field so they're ready to go in the fourth quarter. To me, I think the Colts pass rush is going to be pretty damn good. I think Chris Ballard, that's one thing he has done a good job at, and that's without Samson Ebukam this season. Again, I know injuries can happen, but with what they have interior-wise and a bunch of guys, including Latu, coming off the edge, I think defensive line-wise, they're going to be pretty good. I mean, I would expect that to be, some of the stars of the team on that line. How can you make it that in the fourth quarter they can end games to where, they have enough in the tank to get around the corner or get up the middle and alter timing what can be a second or a fraction of a second, to get their hands up, knock down a ball, hit the arm of the quarterback, or just simply get a sack. Dominating the fourth quarter, it's something I know you felt like they haven't done a lot of. And I think Rayquan Davis was kind of a part of making that a reality, along with it feels like the 5, 6, 7 guys they have that can come off the edge. So I was worried about him. I had to be honest. If he didn't play in the joint practices and then obviously didn't suit up on Thursday, I don't know how we would not go into the weekend and next week not thinking, hey, maybe this guy ends up not making the roster.
Yeah,
right?
He won't be the one doing the big playmaking in the fourth quarter, but he could help keep those guys fresher.
Exactly.
For the fourth quarter. One thing to note on the Colts schedule for this season, when you talk about run defense, I think we've largely just taken run defense for granted here. They've been so good under really Matt Eberflus and Gus Bradley. especially with, and I think Grover deserves, 90% of the credit. The Colts really don't play any elite running backs this season. I guess if you really want to look at the list of the top rushers last year, James Cook would be one of them. Derrick Henry now is in Baltimore. You don't face Derrick Henry this season. So we've talked about it, a better quarterback schedule for the Colts this season. I wouldn't say that about running back. Speaking of a quarterback on the Colts schedule, I would say quite the comments yesterday from old Tua.
Yeah, now I don't think you have not heard these, right?
No, you were relaying these to me in the break, and I was a bit
Yeah,
shocked.
so I want your organic reaction here to this. So Tua was on yesterday, and I guess it was taped. He was on with Lebitard and company on their podcast, and they have a pretty good relationship with the Dolphins and Mike McDaniel. And there's no doubt Mike McDaniel is much different than Brian Flores. One's an offensive coach, one's a defensive coach. Their demeanor and everything else. So Tua had the early struggles. The last couple years has obviously put up much better numbers. Now they need to win in the playoffs, and that's a different discussion. So Tua opened up on his relationship and the coaching that Brian Flores gave him. And this is about 60 seconds of honesty that you rarely get in sports and you rarely get in the NFL.
To put it in simplest terms, if you woke up every morning and I told you you suck at what you did, that you don't belong doing what you do, that you shouldn't be here, that this guy should be here, that you haven't earned this right, and then you have somebody else come in and tell you, dude, you are the best fit for this. Like, you are accurate, you are the best whatever, you are this, you are that. Like, how would it make you feel listening to one or the other? You see what I'm saying? And then you hear it, regardless of what it is, the good or the bad, and you hear it more and more, you start to actually believe that. I don't care who you are. You could be the president of the United States. You have a terrible person that's telling you things that you don't want to hear, or that you probably shouldn't be hearing. You're going to start to believe that about yourself. And so that's sort of like what ended up happening. And it was, it's basically been, 2 years of training that out of not just me, but, a couple of the guys as well that have been here since my rookie year all the way till now.
How about that?
Wow. Boy, Brian Flores would love that.
He got nuked.
Yeah,
Flores got nuked.
Yeah, he'd love to see that all of a sudden disappear from the internet. I found it odd that Brian Flores has not been more of a popular name in the coaching cycle here recently, and I guess probably a little bit of that is why. They won 10-9 games those final 2 seasons for Flores in Miami, and those were Tua's first 2 years. That resume to me would lend you to at least get some job interviews. And I know Shane Steichen, for example, thinks very highly of Brian Flores as a defensive mind. So, wow, that is certainly damning. And I think it's a reminder of how much, and I said this a lot, I guess, going back last April when the Colts were about to draft a franchise quarterback, so much of it is about support and development. And we focus so much on who the player's picked. But then once you get the player in your building, how you support said player and and that is support him one-on-one directly and support him roster-wise and coaching-wise. That is a huge part of that player flourishing or not. And I do feel like Shane Steichen certainly strikes me as an individual that cares a whole lot about that and is a very important influence on Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, when I heard those comments, I thought this is something, with Anthony Richardson, and I would imagine with just about every player in the Colts, I could never imagine someone coming out and saying that about Shane Steichen. And then secondly, I can't imagine.
He did not hold back.
He didn't at all. That's something he wanted to get out there. That is a calculated, hey, we are in a better spot mentally and as a football team because this guy is no longer our head coach. I think as well, and this is for Flores if this is true, and I have no reason to believe it's not true. And we'll see eventually if he says something. I know some other Minnesota Vikings coaches have said, whatever, they put out some statements, but nothing from Flores. You have to be tied to the hip. Even if you're a defensive coach, you have to be tied to the hip to your quarterback. The quarterback matters so much. Even again, if you're a defensive coach, you have to have the offensive people that are there that just make everything make sense. And I think of, DeMeco Ryans in Houston. the offensive staff that he has there and the relationship that it seems like is there with the offensive staff and the head coach with the quarterback and C.J. Stroud. Obviously here, having Shane Steichen, we know that he's going to be tied to the hip to the quarterback. And just, Miami misevaluating the personality of the quarterback and the head coach. And then I would say this as well. These are the numbers that, right now in the first 2 years of Mike McDaniels, they're 20-14. If you go the 2 years that Tua was in Miami with Brian Flores, they're 19-14. Yeah. My point being, it's not like
no.
It's not like Miami has got a huge.
Tua individually has been better. To be fair,
he has, and last year he went up over 4,000 yards, and he was healthy, and that was a huge part. Mike McDaniels is helping Tua. I want to be clear. I believe in that. The flip side of it is, he has the same record with Tua, basically, as Brian Flores, and I did not think that would have been the case. Watching the Dolphins, I would have thought he would have been 4, 5, 6 games better than Brian Flores.
I've brought this up to Mark before, and this is Justin Fields related with Matt Eberflus in Chicago, and I feel this way in Houston, too, with DeMeco Ryans and C.J. Stroud. When you have the defensive-minded head coach and you have the young quarterback, when that offensive coordinator relationship is broken apart, what happens? I think one of the more underrated aspects to this offseason in regards to the AFC South was Houston bringing back their OC.
Agreed.
Remember, he interviewed a bunch of places, and a lot of people thought he would become a head coach.
Did Detroit do that too? Was Detroit able? They kept Aaron Glenn. Were they able to?
He's back.
That's what I thought. So both of those guys,
now, Jared
teams
Goff,
kept their guys.
A little different
True.
Than where C.J. Stroud is from a young, NFL career standpoint. But the fact that Houston can run it back there, there will become a point in time where C.J. Stroud, you've just got to take the reins a little bit more, and it is going to be your offense, and there is just naturally going to be turnover from a coaching staff standpoint. But if you can keep the early years stable, it's so vital. In a way, I'd be curious what Trevor Lawrence would say with True Serum about Urban Meyer.
Oh, God.
And look at what's happened with Trevor since Doug Peterson. It's been much, much better. So I just think NFL franchises, it's such a monumental aspect to developing and supporting that young QB. And you could theoretically draft a super talented dude that, maybe would have succeeded. But if you throw him into, a kitchen that doesn't give him the ingredients that's necessary, then you're not going to be able to make the dishes that you think. And for me, that is why I think here, internally, Shane Steichen's presence is a huge, huge part of it. Now, personnel-wise, they need to continue to support. But I do think from a coaching standpoint, the Colts have that box checked.
I would agree with you. I mean, to me, and I know this is unfair, and I know defensive guys will not like this, I would go with the Shane Steichen type guy as my head coach, just because the synergy at quarterback, it matters more than the synergy. Like you mentioned, Raheem Morris, you thought at times has been a finalist here.
Yeah, I think he was the finalist.
Yeah, if you made me choose between, and I know Raheem is very well respected, but if you made me choose between him or Shane Steichen, I would go with Steichen. Of course, now I know more about Steichen. I've seen him for a year. We've seen him run training camp a couple different times. We've been to those press conferences, even though he doesn't usually say very much. I would always go kind of with the offensive guy because the synergy matters that much. That is one thing, Brian Flores, after, he got let go there, won 19 games in 2 years, got let go there in Miami. If you remember then, he was up for the Giants job, among other jobs he interviewed for, and Bill Belichick texted Flores, congratulations on the Giants job, when he meant to text Brian Dable. So if you remember, there was a lawsuit, and I don't know what happened with that with Flores. So he had to go the 1 year, 2 years ago. He was the linebacker coach for Tomlin in Pittsburgh, and now he's in Minnesota being the DC. He's a very good coach. But, these comments, if I am leading an organization, if I'm an owner, if I'm a general manager, if I'm a president of these teams, I have to know when I bring you in, are you going to be combative with the quarterback? You can't coach every quarterback like that. And Tua obviously, felt enough to say it and to give quite the answer. And for the past 16 hours, that's basically the sound that's been circulating the sports internet is Tua.
Well, and I would add one more thing to it. When you're going to draft a player like Anthony Richardson, there needs to be a little bit more of a training wheel coach behind him. I think C.J. Stroud, frankly, is a little different. D'Amico Ryans in Houston, frankly, Houston, I think, just needed a huge culture change, from the, oh gosh, what's the guy's name? David Culley, remember him? And, the Lovie Smith. I mean, like,
it's just a mess.
Right. And so that, I think, is a little different. If you're going to draft, in Richardson's case, he was one of the, and project is such a negative stereotype word, but that's the word that's popping in my head. I guess if you don't want to use project, he's one of the most inexperienced quarterbacks ever to be taken in the first round of the history of the NFL draft. That is an accurate statement.
Yeah, it is.
If you're going to go that route, you better go offensive-minded. You better, because, when we discussed D'Amico Ryans very briefly, once it quickly turned into Houston, and then certainly Raheem Morris or, the Wink Martindales or Rich Bisaccia. I'm trying to think of these other names.
You would not want Wink Martindale.
I'm trying to think of the other
defensive-minded
names the Colts had. But, I was a Brian Callahan fan, for example.
That makes
sense.
sense.
Now you see Brian Callahan with Will Levis in Tennessee. Those are the guys that just had to rise to the top of the list, especially if Richardson was going to be the draft pick.
That's a good get, though, for Lebertard and Company. To get to it a crap on Brian Flores like that.
That is a great get. Great
get. Funny. It's good stuff. All right, Andrew Greff is going to join us coming up at 9 o'clock. He wrote the GQ piece on Tyrese Haliburton. We'll take a break, though. We'll come back. We'll wrap up hour number 2. Appreciate you hanging out with us on this Tuesday. Wake Up Call, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Boy, I hear the motorcycle revving up. Colts are coming out of the tunnel.
Nothing gets Nick Cross more ready to go and to tackle the running back.
C.J. Stroud on the first play of the game, September 8th, week 1. As you heard there on the promo, Colts-Bengals, our coverage, 5 o'clock Thursday. That will air locally along with Amazon Prime. Again, you won't get your Greg Rakestraw, Rick Venturi, Lara Overton preseason fix. You'll get your Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit, Kaylee Hartung here coming up Thursday night. Fox 59 will just pick up that feed locally. I think it will still be Joe Wrights alongside Matt Taylor coming up Thursday night radio-wise in Cincinnati. And we'll wait today. We'll see what Zach Taylor says, Bengals head coach. We expect the Colts to play their starters coming up on Thursday night around a half. We'll see if Zach Taylor shares that information today. He did not commit to it. But again, that joint practice, 2:20 today between the Colts and Bengals.
Unless I'm mistaken, so it's going to be a late Thursday night for Kirk Herbstreit, and then is he getting on a plane and basically going to Dublin after that?
Wow, I didn't
because
think about that.
College game day is 9 a.m. Eastern. Georgia Tech and Florida State over in Ireland, and the whole crew's there. Everybody's there.
Yeah, Pat McAfee had his last Raw last night. It was his last one. They send him off in high style.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Now,
What happened?
3-minute montage. Well, he's going to do game day, so he's off of Monday Night Raw now till January.
Oh, so he's off
They
until
did a
January.
3-minute
I did not.
farewell goodbye montage to him.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Could Herbstreit pull off the PJ after the St.
for sure.
X
The private jet
high school game?
Yeah, I mean,
Is his son starting for St. X? I feel like that's been a rumor.
Ooh, it's a good question.
St. X Elder ends at 11 Eastern. By the time you get in the PJ, 6-hour flight over there, 7-hour flight to Dublin.
Hey, you get there in the morning.
Crazy.
That sounds.
Can you imagine?
It also.
Can you imagine having the resources to pull that off?
Well, it's not only that. It's like you have to be able to sleep on a plane. And now I'm sure it's different on a private jet.
Tell that to Gosler
Well,
Shirtless.
I know. But I've never been one to be able to sleep on the plane for 6-7 hours. And by the way, speaking of McAfee, I saw McAfee this weekend.
Speaking of Gosler.
Well, no, I saw McAfee.
One time I peed on a plane.
One time I saw McAfee again got into it with people on college game day. They're like, keep your shirt on, talk college football.
I
I'm
think
like,
McAfee's outstanding.
exactly.
on
Everyone
game day.
like we
Mark,
think McAfee's great on him.
Can we get one college game day rejoiner song
Oh, sure.
coming up in the 9 o'clock hour? Just one.
Sure.
I even forget what's it. Big and Rich, is that the name of the
Sounds
group
right.
that does the opening for College Game Day for the last decade, which is the song of college football?
Well, it
Go
was
ahead.
funny. And by the way, you walk outside today and you think college game day is starting at
What is it right now? Let's look.
9 o'clock.
It's 59 degrees.
I saw Joey Molinaro tweeted out a bar song will be played on every college game day this year. I could not agree more with that. That will be an anthem. I cannot wait for college game day.
Oh, I can't either. I used to work with a guy that hated College Game Day. I'm like, you're not even an American.
Really?
I'm like, you don't have it on in the background of the house.
Do we
No.
deport him
He
today
just,
or tomorrow?
He just hated everything. That's basically the way it was. We got to take a break. Yeah, let's go ahead and take a break now. So Andrew Greif going to join us. We believe that's how we say his name. We also believe he's in California right now. Is he answering the phone at 6:01 a.m. in California?
I hope this goes well.
He wrote a great piece, a long piece, following Tyrese Haliburton there in Paris. So we'll talk with him. How is it to hang out with one of the young stars in the NBA? Andrew Greif, he'll join us next. Hour number 3, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Boy, Andy Sweeney. Our next guest here, 9 o'clock hour on a Tuesday morning. Crisp start to this Tuesday morning. It is 9 a.m., just to remind everybody, here in the Eastern time zone. Our next guest is joining us from California.
Yeah, God bless him. 6:01 a.m.
Oh, my God. A great writer and a great human. Those go together. Andrew Greif wrote an excellent feature on Tyrese Haliburton. You can find that GQ Sports. He's joined us right now. Andrew, you're really in California right now, man. Why would you do this?
You know what? I had to get up to go for a run anyway. So I thought, let's do this. Let's get on the radio. I've never done a radio and then gone for a run, except for a morning run. So, first times for everything.
How long's the run?
Great writer, great human, and a great worker-outer here on a Tuesday morning.
How long you running for in California this morning? How long?
Probably an hour. I don't know. That might be. It depends on the pace. I don't know. Probably just an hour this morning.
Dear Lord, I stand out at Colts practice for an hour and think that's my workout for the day. Andrew, great work on the Haliburton piece. We want to focus on that. I guess, when we have writers on that write kind of features about the people that we care about in this market, I'm curious about how it started. Why Tyrese Haliburton? Why did you want to write this on a guy that, if you look at the Olympic team, he's probably 11 or 12 of, people that are truly in the spotlight?
Yeah, I think that he's someone who on that team where everyone is well known and everyone has been talked about for a decade plus, he's one of those guys who is relatively undiscovered, I think, by the casual fan, the people who might read GQ. He's on the rise, he's on the come up, and I think that was the attraction to Tyrese was like, okay, LeBron, Steph, KD, and really, with only Ant and Tyrese being the holdovers from last year's World Cup team, it's like, why are these guys here? What can they make? What do we make of their presence? And why did they get these spots? And so that's why Tyrese, at least to me, was fascinating going in. Because I think if you've watched the NBA hardcore, if you are someone who's dialed in to, the in-season tournament last year or whatnot, you would have known his name, clearly. I mean, he was not a stranger. But I think to a lot of people, in some ways, being on Team USA might be your introduction to a player. And so it was kind of like, all right, if this is his moment, let's take the time to introduce a guy who you might be hearing a lot more about in the coming years.
Andrew, I'm trying to think of a way to say this, but we talked about your article, and we've talked about this with Tyrese before, and that is, this is a guy that obviously, and you wrote about it in your article, was cut from an AAU team, and he kind of was a small player, and he kind of had to grow up, and, now in the last couple years, he's went from NBA player, maybe, fringe NBA star, to max contract, megastar, face of a franchise, Team USA, and everything else. How when you were able to talk to him, how is... Like, he knows that has happened in his life. How does a young guy take it going from not very much to mega superstar in the league? And how do you think he's done handling that, that ascension, if you will, in the league?
My sense being around him, and we ended up being around each other for about 5 hours one night. We were in Las Vegas. There was a GQ photo shoot, and so I followed him around Vegas. We were in the Bellagio. And then we went across the street to Paris. And so we were like walking through the lobby of Bellagio as people are starting to turn their heads. I mean, this is in the story, but people are starting to turn their heads and just be sort of like, hey, is that someone I know? And, it's kind of a fun moment to be able to track a guy. And my sense from being around him was that I think when you're in the moment, like when you're in the middle of the season, I don't think he has the time to really step back and look at it from a big picture perspective. He's just so focused on playing well and being an all-star and this and that. But in that moment, it's summertime, we had a couple months from the Eastern Conference playoffs. He was able to step back. And he said to me, like, yeah, like, I know this is surreal in some ways. Like, I told him, so what we're describing about the AAU being sort of cut, that was only 10 years ago. And think about what's happened since. And he looked at me and kind of smiled and said, yeah, like, I get it. I know. Like, this is not what I would have predicted for myself. So he's very self-aware of how fast it's gone for him the last decade. But I also think that that doesn't mean he doesn't believe he belongs. He doesn't view himself as someone who doesn't belong to have a seat at that table with the top guys. And he very much thinks that, as he said, that when he was watching that Indy 500 parade, that he could see himself having a car in the Pacers championship parade one day.
Yeah, I want to go to that anecdote a little bit more. Andrew Greif joining us here. It's 6:05 in the morning where Andrew hails, and yet he's so diehard. He's with us on the Payless Liquors hotline. Mark just retweeted that article from our show account. Tyrese Haliburton is ready to carry the torch. Again, the feature in GQ Sports. Andrew, I thought you painted several great pictures in the story, but in our market, we all can picture the Indy 500 parade, the Saturday parade, and this is 2023, and Tyrese is driving the pace car that year, and you shared the story of Tyrese in the car saying, "Wow, if we win a championship in Indiana, this parade, you double it, you triple it. Frankly, you probably do a lot more than that from a size standpoint." It seems like it, and again, this is a slippery slope to go down. It seems like there's a genuine love for what this city has provided him, what the franchise and the Pacers have provided him. Did you feel that as well? And I know it's a dangerous game to play. The Pacers have been burnt by it before, but I've always felt that with Haliburton, and I thought your story and his words kind of enlightened that.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt that. I asked him directly about that. I asked him if he felt like, why he talks about Indianapolis to the lengths he does. You can, as a player in the league, you can say really nice things about the city where you play and not sort of go at the length that he does. And I said, so why do you go that far? And he said it was his Midwest roots, growing up in Wisconsin. He's from the Midwest. His girlfriend's from the Midwest. He really feels like a tie to that area that's very genuine to him. And then because I ran into an NBA coach at Youth Team USA practice earlier in the day before I interviewed him, and I told him that what I was going to be doing that day. And he said, I've got some questions I would love to hear a guy like that talk about. And it's in the story where he basically texted me a bunch of things like, well, what is this guy willing to do for his market? Like when you're in a market like that, are you going to be the face? Are you going to be someone who is luring or trying to lure other stars to play with you? Like, are you going to be doing all this kind of extra work that a lot of players maybe don't sign up for? And Tyrese said yes, like he wants to be that guy for Indy specifically. He felt that way, I think, to a degree in Sacramento, again, sort of like a smaller, out-of-the-way place. I think he felt a tie with that. Like, I grew up in a place that people weren't really checking for. How can we make this great? I think that's carried over to Indianapolis, but because of the Midwest location, I think it resonates perhaps even deeper with him as some place that he really feels like he's comfortable in, and it's like he grew up there. So yes, he very much talked about his comfort in Indianapolis and his comfort with the front office, and making sure that guys on the team were kind of on the same wavelength as he was in terms of wanting to win for the city. So yeah, he did not need any prompting. Oh, he also said that he lives in Indianapolis in the off season. Like he said that he really loved kind of seeing this reaction, the surprise on players' eyes when they'd say, "Oh, where you been this off season? You've been on the beach, you've been on Hawaii," and he said, "No, I've been in Indianapolis." And he said that in his retelling that people's eyes would go wide, like, "What? Like you live there?" And he goes, "Yeah, like I love it there."
Andrew Greif with us from GQ wrote the piece. Great piece on Haliburton. Reminder, we just retweeted that, so if you haven't seen that, you can click there and give it a read. It's a good read. What do you think this Team USA experience did for Tyrese?
I think it just sort of underscores. I know he didn't play a lot, but I think it just underscores the belief that you belong there, right? I think he looks now at players who are on that team who are absolute surefire Hall of Famers as peers. I don't think he didn't before, but when you're like a one-time All-Star, a two-time All-Star, it's different than being like a guy who's been around for a decade. And I really do think that when you play in a Team USA setting, all of a sudden you now have like inside jokes with those guys. You have memories that no one else has. So to me, I don't think he goes into this year looking at KD or Bron or Steph as insurmountable kind of like superheroes. I mean, these are just players. These are guys he knows and expects to beat.
Andrew, we'll end with this. We can't thank you enough for the time. Again, Andrew Greif with us here from GQ Sports. If I'm not mistaken, you actually were in Paris for the Olympics, and you were at Cole Hawker's 1,500-meter gold medal win. Is that correct?
It is. I actually went to Oregon. I was on the track team at Oregon myself.
Whoa!
And
Nice.
Not that I knew Cole at any. I was a decade older than him, but But it was kind of interesting to watch him win because I had followed his story since he was a freshman with his outstanding freshman year. So, and I actually sat next to David Woods, longtime Indianapolis
hey
writer.
now.
For many of the track sessions out there, and I actually talked to David before the Cole Hawker win, and he was all prepared. So yeah, it was quite an experience. I've never heard a stadium that loud for track and field. I don't even know how many basketball stadiums I've heard that loud when Hawker went up the rail and saw that opening and took it. We all knew he was a great kind of kicker and closer, but to do it that way in that moment with like 70 meters left was pretty unreal. And I think that goes down as, for me, easily one of like the top 3 moments of the Olympics for track and field. And judging by what I've heard from fans and other people who were there that night, they really felt like it's kind of like a goosebumps moment watching that finish and the way he won.
Well, we're biased, but
Wow.
Andrew, when you even brought that up, I actually got a chill or two thinking back to the call that we played the morning after. It's funny you mentioned David Woods, and by the way, when you said David Woods is always prepared, that's the biggest understatement in the history of things you've ever said. We had David Woods on that morning with us, and just him setting up the race and everything, and us watching it, I feel like we felt that atmosphere, but to hear you describe it in that manner, and boy, you're really underestimating yourself as a track runner if you ran track at Oregon as well. So congrats on that.
Well, I was a long jumper, and then one day the future Olympic decathlon gold medalist showed up on campus, and I thought, you know what? He's a lot better than me, and I should probably figure out something to do with my life that does not involve jumping into sand pits. So that I went a little bit harder at journalism classes after that. So thank you, Ashton Mead.
Well, congrats on that. Boy, that's a very accomplished resume you've got. In all seriousness, Andrew, thanks for making time with us. I know it's early in the morning, and it was fun to kind of spray to a couple different fields with you, so thank you.
Hey, very fun to be on. I appreciate it, and thanks so much. Have a good morning.
That is Andrew Greif right there, GQ Sports. Mark, again, has retweeted that article from the show account, and it was funny, Andy, I was scrolling through the timeline. I'm like, wait a minute, he was at Cole Hawker's 1,500. I had no idea about the Oregon background, obviously no idea about David Woods, but enjoyed that combo.
I did too,
And it's a great piece.
It's a very good piece.
I think for even like us in a diehard market that feels like we know Tyrese Haliburton, I think you'll learn some stuff in reading that.
Yeah, and I think if you're Tyrese, I think you're right that, whether it be Team USA and, he didn't take himself too seriously when he wasn't playing over there. He had the meme, he had the tweet about what did it say when you didn't do anything and still got an A on the group project and he was holding his gold medal. So, I find it interesting as well. We talked about whether the number is 9 or the number, if you count the NBA TV games, is 14. There's a lot of national television exposure for the Pacers coming up this season. Obviously, you make the playoffs. You're on national television as well. All-star games, Tyrese would be there, you would imagine, unless there's an injury or something goes wrong. So, even more so last year into this year, so many people are going to continue to find out about Haliburton. And what's interesting to me about Haliburton is there's part of him that I think people like him, but he's also not the good guy. He's also the villain and likes to play the villainous role, and that's not only in New York or Milwaukee. Does that make sense? Like he's a fun kid, he's a fun guy, a guy you can root for. But he's not the nice guy all the time. He also plays that villain role, plays the cocky role, and does some of those things that makes him a fun personality in the NBA. The other thing, and this is the biggest understatement of all time, I wish I could wake up at 6 a.m. and go running guy. For an hour? Yeah, I actually do.
That sounds miserable.
To get it out of the way, you then come back home, you shower, you have a breakfast, you're ready to start your day by like 8:30 or so. But
those people aren't real.
I just can't imagine putting on the shoes when we wake up and saying, I'm going to go hit the pavement and go run for an hour. I mean, the guy's running for an hour.
I'd rather eat
How many miles is he getting ready to run if he runs for an hour and he's a former track guy? What's he running, 7-minute miles?
I was at the stoplight yesterday before the garage, and there was a guy with his shirt off running, and I'm like, what the hell is going on right now?
When
I can't even imagine.
When we were at the Combine and we were at the convention center, I don't know if you saw them, but there's a group that meets every morning at the convention center, even in the cold. And they're all mostly young, good-looking people, but they all meet over there, and they go run around downtown. I mean, this is before 6 a.m.
How about him just casually dropping? Yeah, I ran track at Oregon. I mean, that's like playing basketball at Duke, playing football at Alabama. Ho-hum. Yeah, Ashton Eaton walks into Oregon. Yeah, I probably should do something differently. Something to add on Haliburton. It's weird because he's a 3-star recruit that got cut from the AAU team, that went to Iowa State. It's not like Iowa State had worlds of success when he was there. Hell, the Sacramento Kings, in a way, told him no. But yet, this dude thinks he can be I think he believes he can be the next face of the NBA.
I do too.
And I know that is a big statement to make. But, the story's titled, what's the exact title? Tyrese Haliburton carrying the torch or something along those lines. That is in reference to LeBron, KD, and Steph will pass the torch at some point. Who are they passing it to? Anthony Edwards?
Right.
Victor Wembanyama, of course, is probably the obvious answer. But, from an American standpoint, who are they passing that to? Tatum? Brown? Tyrese? I mean, if you look at Team USA,
sure,
Tyrese would be on the short list. So he is extremely humbled throughout his basketball career, yet he truly believes he belongs with them. Andrew made the point in the interview of he doesn't view LeBron, Steph, and KD as superheroes. I don't belong in that group. No. I can be a huge admirer of them, but I also think that I'm there. It's just a very interesting, and I think a great sort of belief, personality, mental side to Tyrese Haliburton that I just think is different. Some people are like, hey, I'm the 3-star recruit. Boy, I'm just lucky to be here. Yeah,
that's not him.
I'm going to play every night, and I'm just fortunate. No, he really thinks true stardom should be there for him. So a great read on that end.
We've talked so much about Caitlin Clark and what she has meant to the Fever, and how many more tickets and merchandise. And
now Caitlin was a
popcorn.
5-star recruit.
Well,
I mean,
she was.
She was a little different.
Well, she was, but here's what I'm going to say. She was, but she has changed the Fever, obviously, to a certain extent, and I don't know, how much they would say it. I mean, Tyrese Haliburton has changed the way that the Pacers are viewed. He just is. I mean, Halliburton's confidence, the way he plays, the way they've built around him. Now, we talked about the marriage between Tua and Brian Flores earlier. Well, the marriage between Tyrese and Rick Carlisle, could that be better? I mean, honestly, could that be better?
I'll add one more thing on that, because Andrew mentioned this in his piece. Team USA has provided these moments that I think are extremely pivotal in men's basketball in relation to the NBA as well. Andrew pointed out in the piece that LeBron, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade, they were together on the 06 World Team. They were obviously together in the 08 Olympic Team, and boom, they join up. In a smaller, different way, Paul George came out in his Philadelphia 76er press conference a few months back and said, I really enjoyed hanging with Joel Embiid at the All-Star game in Indy this year. And that all of a sudden opened my eyes to who Joel was. And it goes back to something I've said so often with Haliburton, these Team USA experiences or All-Star experiences. He is a joy to be around. I think people say that. He's a joy to play with. And I think you will feel the fruits of that. That's not just Pascal Siakam at some point in his career. Now, again, LeBron, Bosh, and Wade, that's pretty big. Paul George and Embiid is probably a little bit more on the Haliburton scale, but I do think at some point you're going to see a story down the road. It might be 5 years down the road.
Right.
Where someone references, hey, I played, Paolo Banchero, for example. I played with Tyrese back on the world team in 2023, and I was struck by it, and I kind of always had that in the back of my mind. I think you'll feel that. Again, it's not obvious right now. I'm obviously predicting way out in the future, but I am curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, those things matter. Mark, you might want to close your ears for this one. I mean, you remember infamously when Derrick Rose didn't want to do that? Do you remember that when the Miami Heatles got together with Wade, Bosh, and LeBron? How Derrick Rose was, Carmelo Anthony, if you remember, was a free agent then. And everyone's like, who are the Bulls going to get? And eventually they ended up with Carlos Boozer. I mean, I remember very vividly, because I had a buddy at that time who was just a huge Bulls fan. And Derrick Rose came out and said, no, it's not my job, to go court other guys to come play with me. And Tyrese totally gets that. And I'm with you. The Siakam deal is a 4-year deal, so it might be in 4 or 5 years that it happens. But I think you're probably right. If you ask me, hey, in the next 5 years, will a free agent or a big-time free agent want to join the Pacers because of Tyrese, yes or no? I would say that the safe bet would be that's a yes. That absolutely Tyrese Haliburton is plus his game is the type of guy that you're going to get open shots. Right. I mean, it's not a, hey, I'm going to control the ball and I'm going to be the only one shooting. Oh, it's not that at all. I am interested, when we get to 2028, the role of Tyrese on Team USA. I think, we talk about a guy like Ja Morant who could be a guard, Jalen Brunson, who I know wasn't on the team this year. Does he get a nod? I think there's probably a pretty good chance he does.
Yeah, Tyrese Maxey.
Yeah, Maxey would be a part of that. But, I think, we talk about winning in L.A. in 2028. It's going to be up to these guys. And Tyrese is on the short list of we're going to need guys like that to play and to play well to beat the world.
I want to add one. Well, I guess I want to go back a little bit to a Colts conversation we were having a little earlier. I want to make sure that we got to this because Jackson in this question yesterday. Earlier today, I asked you, Andy, and I asked Joel Erickson, was Jim Irsay being crazy uncle on Saturday night, or was he being, no, this is exactly what I feel about the most important person in our organization in terms of putting this thing together? And that was the blue chip reference to Chris Ballard as GM. Jack asked us yesterday, as we were focusing a little bit more on the topic, how many years of a pass does Chris Ballard get for Andrew Luck retiring? And Irsay has mentioned that at several points. Remember going back to training camp?
I absolutely do.
Irsay brought it up again.
We talked about it. What did he say? Did they finally felt like they were past Luck?
Yeah.
Retiring, finally?
Paraphrasing, I think that pretty much sums up what Irsay said. And now it's kind of funny. We just talked about Tua a little bit earlier in the show. To me, that's one of the laziest excuses out there in describing the Colts' lack of playoff success in the last handful of years. If you look at that first draft class right after Andrew Luck retired, you have 5 franchise quarterbacks in that draft class. 5 dudes that have signed $200 million plus deals. And if you look at the playoff resumes, you add up those 5 quarterbacks. Burrow, I know Herbert hasn't had the playoff success. Tua.
Oh, it's coming with Herbert.
Jordan Love and Jalen Hurts. You add up those 5, Andy, they have played in 16 playoff games. They've won 9 of them. The Colts in that same time frame. So again, that very next draft, but the Colts had the 13th overall pick in that draft. The Colts have played in one playoff game.
One game. Yep.
So if you average those out, those 5 quarterbacks, they've been in 3 playoff games, and all of them have won at least one, probably averaging closer to 2. The Colts have only played in 1 and obviously didn't win that game. So that, to me, it just doesn't add up. How many years of a pass does Chris Ballard get? You're sitting there in that draft. Jordan Love went 15 picks after you had that 13th overall pick. Jalen Hurts went 30, 40 picks after you. So I don't think that is a fair excuse, anything along that. Certainly not a 5-year excuse, which the owner does bring that up pretty organically a lot of times when he talks about either this year's Colts or Chris Ballard in general.
We're getting dangerously close to the Andrew Luck excuse being longer than Andrew Luck's career.
That is such a great point. I should say that's such a sad point, but it's very accurate.
Let me ask you this. You guys know this. 2018 into 2019. So he's gone in 2008. He's gone in 2018, 2019.
We are probably approaching the anniversary. It's probably one of these dates coming up.
It probably is.
I think it'll be 5 years this month, right?
If
we're
August 2019.
There's not many businesses where I feel like you could go back 5 years and still use that as an excuse.
Well, not when
in any business.
You had one of, if not the greatest, quarterback draft classes we've seen in years. August 24th. So mercifully, we won't have to say that on the radio because that'll be Saturday. But yes, Saturday is the 5-year. Hell, it was a Saturday night. Now that I think about it.
You want to do a workday celebration
Saturday
on Friday?
Was a 5-year anniversary.
I remember I was
at that game.
I remember the bar I was at. I remember Adam Schefter. I remember being with 3 buddies who are huge Colts fans, one being a season ticket holder who gave us tickets to that Colts game, that preseason game to someone else. And I remember the look on their face when I said, yo, Adam Schefter just said Andrew Luck's retiring.
I remember sitting there in the press box being like, man, I'm pretty proud of this Chad Kelly, Deion Kane story that's about about to post.
Did that story
Chad
ever see the
Kelly.
light of
Wonder
day?
how many clicks that got.
Yeah.
I remember
16.
I was sitting in the crowd at the game with my dad, and my friend texted me. He said, "Oh, Schefter just reported this," and I looked, and I'm like, "Well, that's got to be a fake Schefter." I was
Right.
looking for the fake Schefter account thing
Because remember, that was a time that there were a lot of fake Schefters. Like
Yeah.
people were doing
the fake Schefters are still getting
people were doing the Ad Darn Schefter because the R in the end looked like an M, so people were doing Ad Darn Schefter. There was a lot of that going on.
Well, and then I showed my dad, and I showed a couple of people that were in the box with us,
boy.
and then all of a sudden you kind of saw it like as it was almost like the wave going throughout the stadium, people looking at their phones and then nudging the people, and then there's like this hushed crowd that just swept around the stadium. It was very eerie.
Now,
And it was like leaving a funeral at the end of the game.
You were in a box for that game?
It was the company suite. I had won preseason tickets here. We don't have that box anymore, I don't think.
Nice.
It wasn't bad though.
I am listening to this college football anthem. I think I like it.
I think I like it too.
Andy's
not a fan.
Do we need to play it after the break, or do you want to play it here? Because
No, let's play it after the break.
I just don't remember. Did they play this last year? Did I just
No.
totally forget this?
Jelly Roll unveiled it
With McAfee
like a couple weeks ago. Yeah,
like a week ago.
I mean, the images in the background help. I'm good. I mean, I'm just such a. I mean, you could do anything on College Game Day and I'd be good with it, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I have to be the get off my lawn guy. That I don't want Jelly Roll. That I want my thing the way it's always been. I don't want change in my life.
It's a little get off.
It's a
my
little
lawn.
bit that. Okay.
That's
you
a
want
little
big
get
and
off my
rich?
lawn.
That's fine.
I want big and rich. Damn it!
Pop quiz in a few.
Big
Give
and
us a call 317-239-1070 for that. So before it's a quick morning check down.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Yeah, Colts off yesterday. We've talked a lot about that in Cincinnati. 2:20, I believe you mentioned, right? 2:20, those practices start there, joint practices in Cincinnati. We still don't know. Maybe we find out today, perhaps even tomorrow we'll find out if the Bengals are going to be playing their starters on Thursday night. But joint practices today. Reminder, the Colts did add a center, Mike P, yesterday, linebacker Mike Smith Jr. as well. They did waive guard Josh Sills.
Sounds like a DJ at Rebel
Mike
back
P.
in the day. Mike P
How
on
do
the
you
ones
say his
and
name?
twos tonight.
Panasu, I don't know how to say his name. Guard Josh Sills did get waived. He was a guy that was, as we mentioned in other hours, KB, probably on the edge of making the roster. He got injured, and he's now waived.
Luke, I was in the beer line at Gateway at the IndyCar race when Luck retired. When I got back into the stands, all of a sudden no one was watching the race, and everyone was on their phones. Gosh. Those scenes from all around. Yeah.
I mean, it is a moment where you always remember where you were at when it
Remember
happened.
when
Without
we
a
had Dave
doubt.
Calabro on a couple months ago? You know, he was at the concerts at
Yep.
Counter Prairie. He's like, yeah, I might have had a pop or two, and all of a sudden my...
He had to drive back to the station.
Yeah, told his wife he wouldn't look at his phone all night, and the son texts the wife and like, Dad better check his phone. There's going to be some urgency on that end. Again, 8 o'clock kick coming up Thursday night, Amazon Prime, Fox 59 for that one.
I tend to think the Bengals will play their starters. They didn't play this last preseason game, so
They
I don't.
did in week one, right? Burrow
Right.
did play a little bit.
I believe so,
in
and
week one.
he's never played in the preseason because of injuries and everything else.
The Reds are back.
The Reds are back.
That's my baseball
They
update.
remain
It's a
third in the
shame
Central.
Mark has not played any of the highlights. 6-3
These are the
last
highlights. What are you
night.
talking about?
6-3 winners. Come on.
6-3 winners.
They used like
The
8 pitchers in the game.
Cincinnati Reds. Anything else on your end?
Nothing. Indianapolis Indians, yeah, they've won 6 straight. They're in Columbus tonight at 6:15. You want to do the pop quiz?
Pop quiz coming
You
up
ready for the
next.
pop quiz?
Let's do it.
317-239. Load them up. Pop quiz. It's coming up next on this Tuesday. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Can you handle the pressure? Sharpen your pencils. It's time for the Pop Quiz with KB and Andy. Brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985.
I've spent the whole commercial watching old College game day intros.
I know you have. You kind of like the Jelly Roll song. I've heard, it's just okay.
I think I'll get there by mid-September. Shout out to the great Dan Hunt. Sends me the 03 ESPN College game day. Bubba Sparks, baby.
Oh, come on.
Let's go.
Bubba Sparks.
Man,
Bubba Sparks at
if
now?
anything says USC is going to beat Notre Dame by 30, that's exactly it. Gosh, that's electric.
That's a throwback right
Mark
there.
goes, where's Bubba Sparks? And I guess I'm going to look it up here. I'll have... I'll let you know. I'm not sure anybody cares. He's lost a bunch of weight.
Bubba has?
Yeah.
So instead of 5 X's, we're down to 2
Yeah,
X's.
he's down.
there.
He's 47 years old. He's still with us. So good for
Let's
him.
go. We couldn't
Damn
get
near
Bubba.
50 years old. Come on.
To Mark's point, if you watch the video, and obviously when College game day rolls, you're going to have the images in the background. I mean, that's a big part of it. So I can't wait. College game day, Dublin, Florida State, Georgia Tech coming up.
You know, my only issue I have with
Saturday.
College game day is when they go down to the guy who's like he's on like the Weber grill and they're doing like a grill segment, but the grill's not on. It's not on and there's no charcoal.
Oh,
so they
you
always
want
have like
something
they always have
yeah.
like a brisket laying there and a bunch of sausages and bacon and turkey legs. But you can totally see that they just took that food and they placed it there. Like, come on, can't we have some smoke coming out of it? It's live television.
Fan breaks
Fire
down the
hazard.
fence. All of a sudden, the grill's on fire. They're lighting all these.
You know how much
drunk
hairspray
college
is on that
kids.
set? You want an open flame near there?
Yeah, that's a
Fair
lot.
enough.
That's a lot of makeup there.
Fair enough.
All right, it's time for the pop quiz. I've not looked at it yet. Have you?
You know what? Actually, no. I got through the first 2 or 3 questions here, but that's it. I haven't got to 4 and 5.
Oh, they actually have some college football questions
4
on
and
here.
5 are long questions with long answers. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll find out together. The first couple, not too bad.
Oh, Scotty, I just said the answer to number 3.
Yes,
Boy,
you did.
Apologies on that end. We'll really test the listening audience here. All right, give us a number 1 through 8.
Let's go caller number 3 today, Mark.
Sam.
Hey, Sam.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Sam, you a college game day guy?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, well, there goes that idea. So that's a no. Do you have a college football team, Sam?
I'm a Buckeye fan.
There you go.
Well, it's fun listening to you, Sam. I guess have a good day. Andy can take this from you.
Don't be a hater on Ohio State. Ryan Day is back. No Jim Harbaugh. You got to feel good. All right, let's start. Question number
Lou Holtz
1.
versus Ryan Day is what we need after last year.
It is
It's got to
what
be
we
the
need.
darkest beard hair dye of all time. I mean, am I wrong there?
It is.
Yeah.
No, it is.
Him and Lovie Smith should have a kid just to see what the beard would look like.
It'd be Ryan Day and Lovie Smith.
Correct, yes.
If they had a kid, what would it look like? Question number 1, the Washington...
Lovey Day.
What would the beard look like?
The beard, right. The Washington Commanders. Let's go, Sam. The Washington Commanders announced that rookie Jaden Daniels will be the starter when they face the Bucs in Tampa on September 8th. Name the last rookie to start a season opener for Washington. Taylor Heineke, Sam Howell, Kirk Cousins, or RG3?
RG3.
Number 2, Sam. Georgia opens college football season's number 1 ranked team in both the AP poll and the coaches poll. Who starts the year at number 2?
Ohio State.
There it is. Well,
That sounds so exciting.
Sam, respectfully, you can kiss my ass.
Oh, wow.
Jeez.
I like that.
I'm
Well,
a
did you see-
Notre Dame fan. I would expect that.
Yeah, thank you. Did you see what his team did to us last
Yeah,
year? Do
okay.
you remember the game?
Remind me, what happened in the final 2 plays? They
You know
forgot.
what happened.
They forgot they had an extra down. What did Freeman do?
No, he had 10 dudes on the field.
That's it.
Should be mad at your coach,
in the
not
pivotal,
your-
the pivotal play of the game, he had 10 defenders on the field. That's it.
And we still almost stopped him.
Question number 3. The college football season begins Saturday with 1 game on the schedule. That game's going to be played in Ireland. Name one of the 2 ACC schools playing in the game. Come on, so easy.
Georgia Tech.
Gosh, if that would have been right. Sam, great start here, brother. The White Sox, they lost again last night. They're 30-96 on the season. They trail first place Cleveland by 43 games. Which team holds the record for trailing a league or division champ by the largest number of games in modern Major League history? I feel like I'm on a run with Andrew Greif after reading that question. Is it A, the 39 St. Louis Browns, B, the 42 Philadelphia Phillies, C, the 09 Boston Doves?
And that's the 1909.
Doves? Or D, the 32 Red Sox?
And that's 1909.
Yeah,
Boston
yeah,
Doves.
1909.
I have no idea about this one, guys. I'm going to go with B.
You say B as in boy or D as in dog?
B as in boy.
So you go with the 42 Phillies. I'm not sure I knew we had a Doves
Sam,
as a mascot.
did you say that with confidence or are you guessing there?
I guessed.
Gosh, I got nervous. I thought he said it with confidence. I'm like, how the hell would he know that?
All right, so this one's not easy either. Which team, you got to listen closely here, which team holds the record for trailing the first place team by the largest number of games since the start of the divisional era in 1969? Okay, good luck.
What?
Was it the 2003 Detroit Tigers, the 2018 Baltimore Orioles, the 2019 Detroit Tigers, the 2021 Arizona Diamondbacks?
I'm going to go with B. The Baltimore Orioles.
Sam, what are you great effort by the way. What do you think about the Buckeyes? Are you a Will Howard believer? Are they a legit national title contender?
Well, I believe that if the quarterback, if Will Howard can play, then they're going to win. They're going to be hard to stop. Their offense is probably going to be the best in the nation.
Are they serious about this true freshman wideout, the best one they've had? I forget his name.
Well, I think they're always true about their wideout. They always have something to say about their wideouts, but
That is
we'll see.
that is an accurate statement. Sam, great work. That was 4 out of 5. The only one he missed was my mile-long run there, number 4, right?
I know. I feel like Scotty did this thing where he knew 1, 2, and 3 the guy can get, but then he's sitting there on 4 and 5 like, come on, big boy. You're going to get this oil change. You're going to get some prizes where Mark Dykton takes your name, your address, and everything else. Then you're going to have to get some good sports talk trivia.
You're going to have to earn it.
You're going to have to earn it. By the way, the kid's name's Jeremiah Smith.
Thank you. I was going to ask.
That's who you're thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, have you seen this as well? I mean, they are like.
I see them talking him up, but I'm kind of with Sam. It's like every year they have some guys that are just
well, and
next
to be
level.
fair, every year they're right. I mean,
Well, every year they're 100%
I mean,
right.
the wideouts
Yeah.
they produce. It was funny. I was Marvin Harrison Jr. of course met the media at Colts training camp, and it's like, yeah, my freshman year it was Chris Olave and Jameson Williams and all these people in his room at Ohio State. It's just like ho hum. I mean, can you imagine like walking into that? I'd pray for one of those guys to come to Notre Dame.
Dude, it's unbelievable. It really is. I mean, Ohio State. Ohio State is one of the teams that, if you made a list, Georgia is on this list as well, of teams that will be in the college football playoff. Like, even if they don't win their conference, they will still be in. Ohio State's one of those. Georgia, to me, is one of those. I'm not sure, given that Alabama doesn't have Nick Saban, I don't know, I think Oregon probably fits that mold as well as a team that even if they didn't win the conference, they wouldn't be in. Like, I don't feel that way about Penn State. I think Penn State could be a 10-2 team. I think they would still get in, but I don't feel about that the way that I do probably with even Ohio State.
Yeah, and it's just it's one of those things where last year you felt like Kyle McCord at times held them back, frankly. I mean,
yeah, you can make that argument.
I thought Notre Dame really outplayed
Listen,
them for large
Ohio
stretches of the
State's
game.
fine. They don't have Jim Harbaugh there. Jim Harbaugh has mind control
What about
on
Oregon?
Ryan Day. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. That's
I say
so
that
new.
because-
I mean, yes, Oregon could absolutely beat Ohio State.
We
yes.
nerded out over this last week. The bye really, really matters.
Absolutely.
I mean, Oregon or Ohio State, one of those teams will only have to play 3 games. The other will have to play 4. And yeah, again, the difficulty of that first or second game probably won't be there for the Big Ten runner-up, but still, it's just attrition. I mean, you still literally have to play a football game, and you got to play 4 games in about a month. So that is something to recall there. Great effort by Sam.
Yeah, well, Sam did a good job there. We'll take a break. We'll come back. Our thoughts as joint practices begin there between the Colts and Bengals in Cincinnati. We'll do that to round things out here on this Tuesday. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
It's the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
little context around this final rejoiner. This is our new College Game Day anthem that we will hear Saturday morning, 9 a.m. from Dublin. That is Jelly Roll. Correct, Mark Dykton?
Correct. Jelly Roll Get By is what the song's called.
I'm a fan. Am
I
I
like it.
naked running around the circle like I'm at a Kesha concert? No, I'm not that, but I'm a fan.
I think the song is fine, but it lacks energy on the front end, and that's what Big and Rich always had with the traditional College Game Day. It had that front end energy
Mark,
that you knew exactly what was coming.
Could you cue up a little Big and Rich?
I didn't think Andy Sweeney would be such a Big and Rich.
No, I mean,
I respect Andy's opinion.
I don't care anything about
Andy
Big and Rich.
strikes me as a good 3-hour consumer of College Game Day.
I don't have any idea any of their other songs. Nothing.
Oh, Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy.
Oh, is
Come
that
on
them
now.
too? Okay, so I'm sure there's a couple
Sounds
that
like Smash Mouth All-Star with me last
well,
week.
probably does. But that's what I know them from. And I'm just saying that energy at the beginning that you know what's coming with College Game Day. I need a little bit more from Jelly Roll. Just a little bit more.
Again, College Game Day. Have they said, are they going Notre Dame A&M next Saturday? There's got to be something else. LSU, USC, is that next weekend?
See, right there.
Yeah.
Like at that moment, you know you're seeing Georgia cheerleaders dancing. Right there at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I'm going
You know what
Jelly
I'm
Roll
saying?
there. I think I'm
You're
going
going Jelly Roll.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I actually might side of the Andy on that one there. I just am so happy. Walking out the door this morning, literally, I thought to myself, this feels like College Game Day weather.
Texas,
Can
Michigan.
we pack the car? Can we go to a tailgate?
So Texas, Michigan is technically, the week 2, but that's a Fox game. That's the big Fox game. So
And Game Day's going there, though?
No, so Urban Liar and all those other guys will end up going.
Low-hanging fruit.
We'll end up
Urban
going
does
there.
a nice job as a Fox
I actually
noon
think he
kickoff
does
guy.
a pretty good job. What Brady Quinn is a part of that
Yeah,
as well. Reggie Bush,
right? Matt Leinart.
So that's where they'll be. That's going to be the big game on Fox, the noon game, which I think was pretty brilliant by Fox to say, hey, people watch college football noon. We know College Game Day is going to be at another game, so let's go to that one. And I'm looking through. I mean, your game is. I mean, Auburn, Cal. No, I'm looking through. There's not a lot of top 25
Barnes
matchups.
in the YouTube chat says it is at A&M, which would make sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's
Well, you
the
have new-
ABC prime
We have a new
timer.
coach, and Notre Dame's a top 10 team and everything else. Plus, the schedule is not that good. I mean, you do have a night game, Tennessee and NC State, but
Is it not
nobody cares
LSU,
about
USC,
NC State.
Or is that?
I'm looking.
And I know USC isn't bringing back Caleb Williams, of course, but I thought that was an opening. I know we get Alabama at Camp Randall later in September, which I think is just kind of a fun game.
That'll
The
be a
fact
good
that
one.
Alabama's traveling. to
Let me
play.
look up Big Ten because I want to make sure this is right. USC gets Utah State week 1 at 11
LSU's
p.m.
week 2, maybe.
So USC, Utah State at 11 p.m. on the Big Ten Network will be perfect after a day of losing bets. To
Double your money, win it all back, or lose even
to
more.
chase one final time at 11:15 at night when Utah State and USC face off there in SoCal.
Just a reminder of our Colts schedule here for this week. Joint practices will begin later this afternoon down in Cincinnati. I should say joint practice. It is a singular practice this week. Just one with the Bengals. Again, that will be this afternoon. Nothing tomorrow, and then Thursday night, 8 p.m. kick from, what is that, Paycor Stadium down there, Scotty? Does that sound right? Bengals and Colts. And that is the preseason finale. And again, I think in years past, we're used to Colts-Bengals ending the preseason, and to use the Rick Venturi phrase, that's the employee bowl. You know, you don't play any of your starters. You play all the back-end guys. And, at that point, the NFL offseason had been, your roster was down to like 75. So literally in the fourth quarter, you're playing like the 22 dudes you're going to cut in the next kind of day or so. That is no longer the case. First, rosters are still at 90 through this game. Final cuts are a week from today, 90 to 53. And at least for the Colts, they are expected to play their starters a half coming up tomorrow, Thursday night.
You think they go more than a half? Do you think they do, come
that's
out in the third
probably
quarter?
there. The old school
that's
thought
enough.
was you do the first drive coming out of the third quarter.
Right.
That was kind of the old school thought. If I'm not mistaken, Steichen left Richardson in the whole first half last year in Philly. He got, I think, a couple of 2-minute situations there late in the first half, which, ideally that's what you would want. is to get him one of those opportunities as well. So, again, Tuesday, Thursday this week, probably some late weekend practice, and then a week from today, 4 o'clock Eastern, cuts are due 90 to 53.
Now, I know like on September 2nd is going to be Labor Day, so I know that's a weekend. College football, people go places and have lives and do things, and, people get off work and school and everything around Labor Day. But still, after Thursday night, we wake up Friday morning, we're at 17 days. Between our first game, between the end of the preseason and September 8th when we finally get things going. 17 days. I heard JMV talk about that yesterday, and I'm like, is that right? It's a full 17?
Yeah.
It's more than
so the
2
Colts
weeks.
Preseason finale is August 22nd. September 8th is the season opener. Now, if you want to get a little bit more optimistic, it's just 2 weeks from Thursday night to the season opener.
Yeah, that's not
What
bad.
do we got? Chiefs.
That's
Chiefs
not
Ravens.
bad.
For some reason, I thought Chiefs Lions. Was that last year?
That was last year.
Didn't the Lions beat them?
I thought the Eagles were involved. Or is
No,
that the
that's
Friday
the Packers
game?
and Eagles. That's in Brazil.
That's the game
on
in
Friday
Brazil.
night
Gotcha.
on Peacock.
Got
I think
it.
a Peacock exclusive.
It all kind of runs together. But
Yeah,
that'll
it
be
does.
Amazon again, Fox 59 coming up on Thursday. You mentioned this a little earlier, but just anything of note you're looking for today?
I just think for me, it's so different because the Colts, and rightfully so, were many steps ahead of the Cardinals. They're a better team than the Cardinals. They have higher expectations. The Cardinals are very much rebuilding there with Gannon, and we don't feel that way with Steichen, and company, and Ballard, the team that he's built. So I think listen, I think Matt Gay's got to be on the list, right? If Matt Gay, I think Shane Steichen would love to, at some point in the first half, kick a 45 and maybe a 51-yard field goal.
1,000%.
And so,
not just the first half, how about the second half?
The entire
he
game,
can kick at any point.
Yeah, maybe the second half would be better. The first half, you wouldn't mind if Anthony Richardson and company, scored those touchdowns there. So, I think Matt Gay's got to be on the list. I think even though Jamar Chase isn't out there, if they play Burrow and they play T. Higgins and they play basically that first-team offense, again, without Jamar Chase, what does the secondary look like? Coach Venturi called Nick Cross a man possessed the other night against Arizona. Do we see similar play? Does he continue to concrete himself as going to be playing next to Julian Blackmon? So I think we talk about that as well. And then just Anthony Richardson, this is probably, this half of football will be the best kind of example of what we're going to see maybe from him for, until we get to week 1 and waiting those 17 days. Are they vanilla on offense? Do they open it up a little bit to some of the stuff we could see early in the season? So I think Matt Gay, I think secondary, and I think this will be a first time, we didn't get too much of it with Arizona, that we'll spend 17 days really talking about what we see in a half of football from Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, Lou Anarumo, their longtime defensive coordinator there in Cincy, he's a name that's been thrown around in some head coaching openings here in recent years. I think people respect him, obviously from a local tie standpoint. I mentioned this earlier. Zach Moss is your likely Bengals starting running back. Remember Charlie Jones at Purdue?
Yeah, I do.
Great of a year. He's been a little banged up
I know
in his NFL career.
I know he got injured. They were worried about his injury, but I think he's okay, if I'm not mistaken.
Cincinnati actually practiced yesterday. So I think
I remember Charlie.
There's a good chance he plays, Thursday, practices today. And a guy we've had on the show, but he's had a hell of a career as a day 3 draft pick. How about Ted Karras? I mean, on and off the field. He was their Walter Payton Man of the Year. He's done some incredible things off the field. The Cathedral product, obviously the Karras family, well thought of. But yeah, for a day 3 pick, he's approaching a decade-long run, and he is your center snapping to Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I just think, we got a little bit last year of the Eagles had success in those practices against like the secondary, and it's understandable.
A.J. Brown started to feast.
A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, it's a very good group there. Do we get similar reports, I guess, from Cincinnati? I think that would be number one. And if nothing else, it's going to be fun to see joint practices right into a game. I mean, this is a big week for the Colts starters. This is a massive week with the joint practices and actually playing in a game.
Tease a couple things on the website, 1075 The Fan. I've got 10 roster questions I'm looking at ahead of cutdowns next week and answering the 53 questions we did at the start of camp. So 1075thefan.com.
Yeah, appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Podcast will be up 1075thefan.com. JMV at 3, Jake and Company at noon. Have a good day.